Is this the $1,600? No, $13,000?
No, that was their big deal. There's another one that you can get like 6 months right now for, it started off at being $1,300.
No, I didn't. It was $1,300 off.
$1,399.
Oh, okay. No, I didn't do that.
See, I've done a couple of those things. I'm looking for somebody to
I'm just trying.
who has me with
I'm trying to get. They didn't really give me a recommendation.
We can have an investment club.
Okay.
Just a second. Oh, in case there's any broadcasting on. Here.
Roy Charles Brooks, Commissioner Precinct 1.
Present.
Devin Allen, Commissioner Precinct 2. Here. Terry Davis, Commissioner Precinct 3.
Here.
J.D. Johnson, Commissioner Precinct 4. Constitutes a quorum.
He said here. Our invitation today will be delivered by Pastor Marty Collier from Rush Creek Church in Arlington. Thank you for coming out. After the invocation, please remain standing for the pledges.
Thank you. Father, today we want to just thank you for the gift of life that each and every one of us have been granted with today. And God, may we not take that life for granted. Every breath that we take, God, is a gift from you, and we praise you for that. For the men and women in this room, Lord, I believe that you've appointed them for such a time as this, and these are difficult days. And so I pray that you would grant them today with strength, with wisdom, with courage, but also with patience and endurance to lead through the challenges of this day. God, I pray that every decision they make, they would recognize the lives that are impacted with these decisions. And God, may you grant them just an incredible peace today as they do the work of this county. Lord, we praise you, and again, we thank you for the gift of life. In Jesus' name, amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you, Reverend.
Thank you, sir.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So just a few agenda announcements before we get started. We have one item that we're going to hold today. This is under Human Resources. It's item 7C3, which is the change of the TO as it relates to purchasing. We're going to hold that for 1 week. Also, as we have done in the past, we're going to take several items out of order. This is going to be somewhat different this morning. Rather than starting with the current and emerging health trends or issues, we're going to go to the briefing item, which is item 10B. When it gets to the administrator section, this deals with the discussion as it relates to the Commissioners Court legislative policy statements. We'll be doing that. At that time, we do have, I think, several judges that are in the audience today that may want to speak on some of that, and then we'll get into the health issues. Thank you, Your Honor.
Your Honor, before we get into the meat of today's agenda, it was appropriate that the pastor this morning talked about how precious life is. In that regard, in the past week, we have lost 2 members of our county family to accidents. Eric Ware, a senior buyer in the purchasing department, lost his life either this morning or late yesterday. And Michael Applin, the husband of Amanda Applin, my community outreach coordinator, lost his life in a vehicle accident last week. I ask that we lift up the members of our county family as they grieve, and that we close court today in honor of Eric Ware and Michael Applin.
Thank you, Commissioner Brooks. We will certainly do that. Court members, you have before you the minutes of our regular meeting of January the 5th.
Move approval.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson? We can't hear you. I think that says yes, but we still can't hear you. Nope.
About now.
Unfortunately.
We got you.
Motion passes unanimously. Court members, you have before you the consent agenda.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Mr. Maynes?
I do have one announcement.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, go ahead.
Did just want to share that on tomorrow evening from 6 to 7, I will be hosting a COVID-19 vaccine town hall with Dr. Tanasia, as well as with a Precinct 2 constituent who's a recent vaccine recipient. So anyone should tune into this. We'll be hosting it on Facebook Live, talking about giving an update on COVID in Tarrant, as well as largely the discussion will be around the vaccine. My office, as I know with my colleagues, have received a ton of questions about the vaccine, and folks being interested in it or wanting to receive some additional education as they work to make an informed decision about receiving the vaccine. So again, that's tomorrow, January 13th, from 6 to 7 p.m. You can just go to my Facebook page, Commissioner Devin Allen, for that Facebook Live on the COVID vaccine. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other announcements at this time? Mr. Maynes?
Okay, Your Honor, we're now going to go to the briefing item. This would be item 10B. This is discussion regarding amendments to the Commissioner's Court legislative policy statements. Mr. Schaffner is here to address the court at this time.
Good morning.
Good morning, Judge, Commissioners. Thank you for your time this morning and for moving this item up on the agenda. Really do appreciate that. So we are here today to seek discussion and direction from the court regarding 5 additional policy items. The first 3 are items that the judges have requested. The next 2 are related to public health issues. So we emailed out to everybody a packet of information that shows the budgetary impact of the potential budgetary impact of the 2 additional courts, as well as supporting information, a supporting packet of information that the judges and Greg Sugar and his team have put together in order for us to evaluate this particular issue. Since that time, Tom Wilder was kind enough to compile information from the district clerk's databases, and I can distribute that information to everybody as well.
Russell, let me have.
Okay, so To begin the discussion regarding the first item, which we wrote a potential or a draft, if you will, policy statement that we put in the briefing item, support the approval of 2 district criminal courts. So a little bit about process, legislative process and procedure on this particular issue. District courts, criminal district courts, are a creation of the state. We have to file legislation that will be considered a local bill, which requires a resolution by the Commissioner's Court in support of creation of the criminal district court or courts. We'll file the local bill. We have to also put a notice in the newspaper regarding the local bill to make sure the public is aware. And then as those steps are completed, the bill will be heard in committee. And then generally with the courts bills, those are all wrapped up into an omnibus courts bill, which will then proceed through the process and ultimately be approved. That's how it's worked in the last several sessions, and we have no reason to believe that there would be any difference within that. So the key today would be whether or not the court wants to move forward with supporting 2 additional criminal district courts. The financial impact to the county is significant, and Helen with the budget office did a great job of coming up and modeling what that would be, and the anticipated budgetary impact for, and again, this isn't the first year of the court, but when the courts are fully up and running, would be approximately $4.2 million a year per court. And you have the budgetary information related to that. So that's to begin the discussion. I know that Judges Gallagher and Carr are here for any further information or discussion, and I look to you all on how you'd like to proceed.
So before we go forward,
Yes,
the
sir.
4.26 million per court, does that include any type of renovations that we have to do in the Curry building?
And thank you, GK, for pointing that out. That would be the additional renovations necessary for staffing related to the criminal district attorney's office would be in addition to that. And Helen may be able to speak more regarding that issue, but we would have additional renovation costs for CDA staff.
Okay. So it's 4.26 plus.
Yes, sir.
Plus, I'm assuming that we have some type of facilities analysis to ensure that we have adequate space to not only put these courts, we have courtrooms, but also the necessary staff or space within the district attorney's office for staffing.
Yes, with additional renovations.
Okay. Thank you.
You
Thank
said
you, sir.
Russell with additional renovations. Is that what I heard you say? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
And that's basically because we have courtrooms in the building that were once used by the civil judges. They've moved out at this point in time, and so that's why we have those extra numbers.
Yes, sir. There are adequate.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
There is adequate courtroom space for the 2 additional criminal district courts per the judges and court administration.
What we need to do is to ensure that depending on what the court wants to do on this, that we have adequate space to build out office spaces for the additional prosecutors and investigators that are assigned to each one of these courts.
And we currently have 20 state courts.
So we're talking about
We're
criminal.
talking about just the criminal,
We're talking
right?
only about criminal courts, correct?
So we have 10 criminal district courts and 10 county criminal courts.
And how does that compare with the other urban counties that are on Mr. Wilder's list? Tarrant, Bear, Dallas, Harris, and Travis.
Under Texas law, the Office of Court Administration has the duties to obtain all those figures from the clerk, and then they actually compute in Austin on our figures the clearance rate and backlog index. And I went ahead and put on my website some years ago a comparison between our various
That was
courts.
my next question. My first question was, how many courts do the other urban counties have as compared to Tarrant County?
That really, I don't have the numbers with me today, but it's based upon other metrics. It's not, there isn't an imbalance caused because they have more courts, really. Plus, they do their business so much different in Harris County and Dallas County than we do, that, again, whether the clearance rate and backlog index is accurate is really up to the...
Okay, so you want to talk about the backlog index, explain it to me.
All right. Where is that Office of Court Administration?
So, and we have a
Let me read
handout
it
that
to
we
you.
gave them that shows basically what you're looking at. It's not broken down by criminal courts. I think that's what your question was.
Well, isn't it, go back to, I'm saying, the thing you just handed out to us, next to the last page.
Yeah, the backlog index.
Yeah, there's an explanation from the OCA how they do that. If I can lay my hands on it here. Here it is. It's on my phone. It should be on that, down there at the bottom. It's basically, let me get it up here where I can read it.
You're saying on the last page of what you handed us?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
The clearance rate is a measure of how effectively a court is disposing the cases added to its docket. A clearance rate of 100% indicates that the court disposed of the same number of cases during the year as were added to the docket during the year, resulting in no changes to the court's backlog. Then the backlog index is a calculation used to measure the size of the court's backlog. It measures the pending caseload against the court's capacity to dispose of the caseload during a given time period. Now, that's where I think they load in the disparity on the different amount of courts. Specifically, it is the number of cases for a given case type pending at the beginning of the year. A backlog index of 1 means that the court disposed of the equivalent of the pending caseload in 1 year. A court should have a minimum goal of achieving a civil backlog index of 1 or less. On average, the criminal cases should be disposed more quickly than the major civil cases, so courts should maintain a lower backlog index for criminal cases than civil cases. So we have the, excuse me, we have the backlogs by year.
So a backlog index of less than 1 is a good thing.
Yes.
And the closer to 0 that backlog index gets, the better.
For instance, in Tarrant County, the backlog index on criminal cases would be 0.4.
0.4, which is substantially less than 1.
Yes, and if you look at Bear has the same as we do, and then we're better than Dallas, Harris, and Travis.
Similarly with the clearance rate,
Now again, let me make sure you have the background on these figures. The Office of Court Administration uses the state fiscal year, which ends August the 31st. So this computation does not include the big end of the COVID cases September, October, November, December. Now, you can see that more readily on the chart we put in here, which is this smaller one, where it shows how the pending cases have gone up beginning in January of 2020, where the carryover there was 13,916 cases, and they've gone up every month to the current 22,536. So that is a substantial increase in the pendings. So that is probably more reflective of what you may be looking at. The Backlog and Clearance Index does not have September, October, November, and December, so it does not reflect the summer spike we had on COVID and the resultant impact on the courts.
The spike related to COVID, one could assume, if one assumes that COVID is a temporary condition, then one could assume that the spike in cases related to COVID would be a temporary spike,
Except,
a temporary condition.
If you look at the other page in here that shows the one with the long spreadsheet looking one that we've done every year since I've been here, if you go back to 2015, you will see that we had 17,341 cases filed, and that has steadily progressed to 2020, and again, that's going to be fiscal year 2020, 22,335. So we've had a substantial increase over the last 4 or 5 years that did not have COVID in it. In fact, we've set records 4 years in a row, including this most recent year. We were up just 1% over the previous year, but that's on top of a record year the previous year and 2 years before that. So case filings are going up. The DA files lots of cases. We monitor that regularly. We don't see a slowdown in filed cases. So you got pending and you got filed. That has to be factored into your decision. With population growth, I don't see any way that these cases are going down. We've done some other metrics that I didn't bring with me today. You know, State Representative Phil King asked me to get involved with the Parker County decision where they added courts some years ago, which was quite a fracas. And their population growth was what I used to try to project based upon some previous things that we've done over here to show that the courts were justified. And I don't believe that any of that's changed. We're going to have more felony criminal cases as we go forward.
When's the last time we added a court?
That was
2009.
yeah, that
When?
was
2009.
the 432nd, Judge Gonzalez.
So from 2011 forward, we've had 10 criminal courts, which looks like that means from a criminal case standpoint, we've been around 1,700 per court if you were just looking at it for a long time, because we've been at 17,000 cases filed since 2012. It's been pretty consistent at 17,000. It started going up a little bit in 17, where we went from 17.2 to 18.1, and then we've been to 20 plus thousand each year. 2000, the last couple of years we've been at 22. So again, 22, 335. about 1,700 cases. That would be 12 to 13 courts. What about, I know we've added a bunch of magistrates, and I know that they don't hear cases, but should that be any kind of a factor to allow the district judges to be able to handle more than the 1,700 cases that y'all had been averaging in the last several years?
I think that Judge Gallagher can come up and speak to that. And for Commissioner Johnson, Judge Gallagher will come up and speak to that particular issue.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you, Mr. Manius, for letting us go first.
Sure.
Okay, thank you. Our magistrates they are limited in certain items that they can and they cannot do. And so they cannot do anything involving a jury. Of course, neither can we at this point. But if we open back up to where we get to that point, it's the district judge that has to schedule the cases to get heard. And then if the judge wishes to designate a magistrate to take a plea, that can be done. But the rest of the business has to be done by the judge, including all trials that come in front of the judge.
But everything that the judges, or everything that the magistrates do, if the magistrates aren't there to do it, the judges have to do it.
Correct.
And so I guess my question, in 2009, y'all had 3 full-time magistrates and 3 part-time magistrates, and now you have 8 full-time and 5 part-time. So, we've doubled that, so it would seem like that should, what I guess I'm saying is I think the 1,700 could be a little bit higher, and that may still end up getting you to the point of qualifying for, or filling the numbers for 2 new courts. But that's one of the things that I guess I'm trying to understand, because in the past, can the magistrates, they can hear, if they weren't doing something, the judges would have to be doing whatever they're doing.
Correct. But most of the new magistrates are handling all the magistration issues with the jail that changed 2 to 3 years ago. There are 3 or 4, I believe, magistrates that are basically assigned to the courts, and the other magistrates handle the jail. And so even though you look and we say, well, you've got 8 magistrates, not all of them are available for court time because their schedules are set up to where the jail is being covered.
So those magistrates in the past, the jobs that they're doing, what you're telling me is, that was what was being done by the JPs, by the municipal judges, all of those where they were hearing they might be hearing the first proceeding or the first appearance of the person in the city jails or in some of the other places.
They're
Correct.
setting bonds.
Yes. Going back to 2009, when you were talking, Judge, those 3 magistrates, they worked 8 to 5 jobs. They worked 8 to 5 hours. They were on call when we were there. Now we've got the magistrates that are working basically 24/7. And there are some of those magistrates that they may come in at 1 o'clock in the morning and they get off at 8 o'clock.
Your 3 minutes are up.
I'm sorry? Okay, thank you. So it's when you look at the numbers, you say, well, you got all these magistrates. Yeah, but not all of them are assisting the courts. They're handling the jail.
Okay.
Judge,
Yes, sir.
one of the things that we're consistently told about the criminal justice system and the need to reform the criminal justice system is that most defendants are being encouraged strongly to take plea bargains, and that very few cases actually go to trial. Is that true? And if it is true, doesn't it mitigate against the need for more trial judges?
Well, Commissioner, that's going to be a problem that's going to exist for, in my opinion, for a long time. And that's not something that we can change here. I've been on the bench 21 years. Just to give you an idea, if you try a felony criminal case and you pick a jury on Monday and you have the jury assess punishment, it'll go till Friday. It'll take you all week. So if all 10 of us tried a criminal trial every week, that'd be 500 cases that we could dispose of in a year. And we have 22,000. So plea bargaining is an essential part of the system. Whether or not there is an internal bias, I can't say. I just say that I see it from the very beginning. What I tell people is when you're in a criminal case and you're trying to plea bargain it, it's like buying a car. Everybody's got a certain point that they want to get to. And when I was in private practice, I used to tell clients a trial is the least thing that you want to do because you lose all control over what's going on. You're putting your life in the hands of 12 people that you don't know anything about. So is there a bias? I don't know. All I'm saying is what we have to work with now and looking towards the future. And that's why we're asking for this today. We're not asking this lightly. We recognize that there is a fiscal hit involved in this.
A tremendous fiscal
Absolutely.
hit.
And that's why we're asking we're asking that if we get the resolution from the commissioners that we spread it out over, we have one court come on in 2022, one court come on in 2023. We recognize that, but we're looking to the future to where from 2009 to where we are now, look at our population growth. There are very few things I will agree with in public with Mr. Wilder, but he was spot on. Our population continues to grow up, and that population is going to drive the cases that are filed. So that's why this county's always been preemptive. It's always looked to the future, and that's what we're asking for today. Let's look to the future.
My only problem is that creating new courts is like the gift that keeps on giving year after year after year. That $4.3 million per court per year is going to always be with us. In fact, the cost is going to go up as costs escalate. I just don't know whether we can afford it.
Well, with the other thing to keep in mind with criminal courts is there's always going to be somebody that's going through that jail. And that jail population is going to potentially go up and up and up also. So, just saying.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's something I'm trying to reconcile is the cost that we pay now versus the cost later, and to your point about being future focused. But what is the cost of delivering justice? The human cost as well as the financial cost, and can we afford it? And I don't know that if I have numbers of what it'll cost, and kind of talk through that either GK or Helen. What does that look like for us with the cost for these courts?
So, Commissioner, would you mind asking your question one more time?
If we can go over the numbers, the costs.
Okay.
I know we talked about I've heard the aggregate total, but I guess the breakdown of that cost.
So Helen, is Helen here? I can go over some of it, but Helen, why don't you come forward?
So the cost that you see of the is including district clerk, sheriff's office, DA's office, and the court. It includes the, do you have the sheet in front of you? Do y'all have that sheet?
Are you talking about this one?
So there's the felony court team. It's the team set up by the current DA on how they try the cases. The court.
I don't know, just hold on a second.
Okay.
I'm not sure I have that one in front of me. I have the, What page?
He's getting in, I guess, yes.
It's not on that particular handout, I don't believe. I might have it down here in the stack.
And yes, this is what, at the current rates they are, the salaries at the current rate. So every year,
I think they're trying to make some copies so all the
Okay.
board members can have some.
That would be helpful.
absolutely.
Just stand by just a second. And the sheet that we're going to be providing you has a breakdown as it relates to DA costs, district clerk costs, SO costs, and other costs, but it'll give you a much more detailed breakdown of that. I think they're fixing, I have one extra thing. Just a second.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
And Commissioner Johnson has one also?
It was emailed out on Friday.
Okay. All right. So we all have the sheet. And if you look at the highlighted yellow section, that's a summary of all the costs. So we can start there. You can see that the felony court team, the CDA felony court team, district clerk and sheriff, and I've discussed with all the departments, verifying that this was their need. In addition to that, there's $500,000 for capital and furniture, and that is specifically for the courts. That is not for the DA's office renovations that would be needed. That is a separate cost totally. I know that Russell had information from Tracy Pelly a couple of days ago. I do not have that information off the top of my head of what that cost would be for the renovation. There is assigned space to the CDA for the renovations to happen, but right now it's currently courtrooms. And then in addition to that, you've got approximately $2 million for court-appointed attorneys and costs associated with trying the case.
So the 4.2 though includes $500,000 in capital, and that will not be a reoccurring, but I'm assuming that the
That's correct.
operating budget would be, so the 4.2 would actually be 3.7 on a reoccurring basis.
On a reoccurring,
And Helen, what is the distinction between the item called felony court team and the item called CDA felony court team?
That's actually the court team itself. That's the district court. The district court itself is the felony court team.
So that would be the district clerk's person, the court reporter,
The district clerk has a separate line.
No, the court team judge and commissioners would be the court coordinator, the court
Judge.
reporter, that type of, and the judge's supplemental salary that the county pays.
So if you go up to the top, you'll see the DA felony court team at the very top of the sheet, and then over to the right side, you see court team, and that's what the court team is made up of.
Okay.
And then you have the sheriff, 3 bailiffs, and then the district clerk, which I spoke with the district clerk regarding their costs and what they would need, and it shows you the specific positions. But that would be ongoing. But that is, again, the current salary rate.
So and I'll ask this question of the CDA. And I know y'all are civil, not criminal. Do we actually have to have 5 attorneys for every court, including a Michael Morton attorney for every court?
Judge, I think that would definitely be a question for Sharon. You know, I'm not familiar with that state, but I think you probably ask.
Our current
George?
Our current felony courts have all of them have 5 attorneys assigned.
Yes, sir. That is the way that the current DA has it set up per court pod.
Actually, there are 6, because one of the members of the court team handles the pending grand jury cases for that court, and they rotate. So in each felony court, there are technically 6 felony prosecutors assigned to that court. But if you look at the numbers, let's assume that there's 22,000 pending cases, which there are. And so let's say we do the math, and among the 10 courts, that's 2,200 courts. That means each of those prosecutors, of those 5 prosecutors, are handling 500 plus cases per court. And those numbers continue to go up. And we haven't had a new court since 2009.
And I'm assuming that we, materials for all departments, blah, blah, blah. Counsel fees, is that indigent defense?
Yes, sir.
And Judge, those costs are gonna be, those indigent defense costs.
They're gonna be there
They're gonna be
anyway.
there anyway, whether you have 1 court or whether you have 20 courts. That's driven on a case basis.
So I just want to point out that I did reach out to the CDA, and that is the court makeup that she gave to us. So I want to point that out.
I understand Mr. Wilder's contention that his data does not include the COVID spike. It does not include September, October, November, whatever. But according to the footnote that explains the backlog index, it measures the pending caseload against the court's capacity to handle that caseload. And the backlog index is a low number, meaning that there is plenty of capacity in those courts to handle the caseload.
Well, since the OCA,
According to the OCA's definition.
how they actually compute that has always been a mystery. I haven't been able to get any information on that. But one thing about on the plea bargains, I haven't got any numbers from the current DA, but the previous DA, they plea bargained 94% of them. So the plea bargaining thing, of course, that would be misdemeanors and felonies. Misdemeanors are plea bargained out, I'm sure, to a greater degree than are the felonies, although many felonies are plea bargained. So you basically have that plea bargain arrangement in effect for many years.
Okay, I guess I'm still trying to figure out on the 2 million plus costs. I agree with, we're gonna pay the counsel fees regardless. Now, we may pay them quicker, but ultimately, we're gonna pay them. So it may be just gonna go up. We're postponing, and And I guess the problem might be if we don't do them quicker, then we're still gonna pay the same amount in indigent defense costs, but we're gonna get to pay for them to sit in jail for a little bit longer. And I guess the other question, I see some computers and ancillary equipment, so again, we're looking at that as being annual costs, and that's really not an annual cost.
The capital is,
Well, you got it in there as a computer and ancillaries.
that is correct. There is, but that's, it's tech refreshed. It'll always be, that is not a one-time cost. It's an ongoing cost throughout the county.
And travel and education, if this is for the indigent defense attorneys, we're not paying their travel and education. So what's that for?
Not for the indigent defense, that's for the court team and the DA's team. So
So that's not already included in the court and the DA's team?
no,
up
that
at
was
the top?
staff, no, that's correct.
Judge, I believe each of the felony courts receive, I think it's $3,500 per court for education. If I need to, if
Is that per person or just for all
No,
of them?
per court, per
Yeah.
court.
Okay.
And then you have the DA's cost also for continuing education.
So, I appreciate that this is a large cost. I don't know, if we don't do it now, when would we do it? And things aren't gonna get any less expensive. I guess I'm trying to understand, obviously I know this is contingent upon the legislature, so it would be 2 years from now. What does that mean for us 2 years from now? And then what's the long-term implications of us not acting now versus 2 years from now?
Well, that's one of the reasons why we are here today, because we believe that the time has come. It will be now, 12 years since we've had a new criminal district court, because the last one was in 2009. You look at the population numbers that have gone over in that 12 years. If we don't ask this legislative session, then that kicks the can down the road 2 years. What's going to have happened to this county in 2 years, to where we have to wait probably another year to get the enabling legislation to get started. So that's why we're trying to piecemeal that process to get that going.
Sure.
Does it make any rationale to ask for one and then go back, or ask for two, but instead of implementing it the next year, implement it 2 or 3 years down?
I don't know if
at
the
some point it hits, but it gives us time to move into it.
I don't know if the legislature can enact a court outside of the biennium is the concern I would have on that, Commissioner.
Follow that,
Okay?
because they're budgeting money for the court.
Correct.
During that biennium.
Correct.
Not
Like
much.
the bulk of my salary comes
They
from
wouldn't.
the bulk of my salary comes from the state. And so they would have to treat that as a revenue, budget issue.
Yeah, but your bulk of your salary that comes from the state ain't gonna break the state.
I'm sorry?
The bulk of your salary coming from the state is not going to break the state, because it's what, 100 and...
It's 140 is the,
140,000.
yes. Mhm.
And then we get to pay 20 times that much.
I understand. And that's, quite frankly, that's why when I spoke to everyone, we recognized that this is a hit, and we didn't want to come in and say, we need $30 million next year. We want to spread it out so that y'all have the ability to absorb it, because we are not asking for this lightly.
Helen, have you got any, I always ask the question that, I try to find the question I ask that you don't have. Have you done is there any way to even begin to estimate the number of days we might save on prisoners in the jail? See,
No, sir, I did not do that analysis.
my day is made.
Okay, glad to make your day.
Do you think it's even, and I understand how difficult that would be to do.
No, I think that Mike Laughlin and I could get together and come up with a cost. I think an average cost of the average length of stay. I think we could come up with it. GK, were you going to say something?
Not anymore.
He was gonna bail you out and say that there was no way in hell you could do that, and you just took care of that for him.
Helen, is there any income, what kind of income is generated out of these courts?
I didn't hear the
I'm
last of it.
assuming they're
Revenue.
court costs that somebody's paying?
What's the revenue from the? these
So
courts?
there are, that would be over in the district clerk, there are fees and fines that are being assessed.
But is that figured into this
No, sir.
3.5?
We get so
4
much per, we've looked at revenue, when we've done our budgets, we get revenue estimates, the ones, we used to get a whole lot more out of the county criminal courts than we do. The problem is that somebody in these felony cases, they're usually unemployed for a few years after they get finished with those cases.
We currently are bringing in around $3 million a year on collections.
Total, out of the 10.
So that's $300,000 a court in revenue?
If you want to do the math that way, yes.
Or does that include?
Well, you got some other way you wanna do it?
It's gonna
County
vary,
court?
it's gonna vary significantly. There are ways, we could compute ways to see what court costs are levied and which are not, which are waived by the judge. We've got those numbers.
So I hear you just saying that maybe we ought to have some conversation with the judges about waiving certain fees.
Well, when Ms. Schneider was here, we provided those figures at her
So
request.
just understand that whenever we talk about what we collect in, I'm assuming that's criminal court filings and fines, the $3 million.
Fines, fees, and court costs, yes.
So what we're talking about, you might remember that over the last 10 years or so, we have been tasked by the state to develop a plan on how we collect court costs, mainly fines and fees. And so we have individuals, especially in the district area, where they may get a $10,000 fine, but we send them to the prison system. They probably don't make a lot of payments while they're sitting in the system. What we try to do is capture that money when they come back out, either through parole, through the parole process, or even if they go on probation, we try to capture that. And that's a function that Mr. Wilder does. So it's a cumulative of a bunch of different activities over a longer period of time.
And since we assumed the responsibility for that, the legislature put into effect, what was it, 07, Alicia? My criminal manager, Ms. Morris, is here for.
So it was 13 years ago.
And we essentially have ramped that up substantially. We aggressively work with the parole office. Every now and then you'll get one over there that's not very responsive, and that precipitates a call to a legislature who, I get my phone calls returned when that happens. And although we've had some spotty correlation there, we generally get what we need out of the parole officers. We have them hooked up to our court document system where they can see what is owed. It is a condition of their parole that they pay those costs. The problem is some of them are paroled back into another county rather than the county of offense. That we don't have any idea about. They basically, we lose that money.
Yeah, it's a vicious circle of an argument. The burden of fines, fees, and court costs is one of the primary factors involved in recidivism, because the burden of coming out and turning your life around with all of these fees that you'll never be able to pay is, I don't want to hear the conservative side of that argument, Mr. Wild.
No, Commissioner, what I was going to say to you is that in the last 3 to 4 years, the legislature has mandated to the judges that we are to, after we make a finding of indigency on a person, that we are not to burden that person to where the fees and fines, they continue to be indigent until we find that they are not indigent. And so if you see that the revenue numbers are going down over the last few years, I attribute it to that, because the judges take the approach that if you're indigent, we're not going to saddle you with a bunch of excess court costs that you have to pay. We want to make sure that you get through the system fairly, and it's not, and so that I don't set you up to send you to prison because you can't pay, is where I'm coming from.
Right. And our numbers reflect that, which is what I was going to say. Those collections are going down because the assessments are going
Mea
down.
culpa, Mr. Wild.
Thank you. And also the waiving, the waiving of the fees. The judges can waive punitive fees, they're not supposed to waive administrative fees. But they waive quite a bit, and that's not our fault. It's just what's left on the page to collect.
Actually, what we do is we give credit for the fee. If somebody's been in jail and now all of a sudden they come out, we give them credit for the fee because they've been in jail, and then they don't have to pay it.
And we do collect from the prison system, where they pay on a small amount, so they're not burdened with those costs.
So Russell, do you have any additional information for the court on this?
So on this particular item, again, we are seeking court's direction on if you want to proceed with a resolution regarding seeking 2 additional criminal district courts. And with that, it would be having one come online or begin in FY 2022, and then another one in FY 2023 to spread the beginning of each of them over 2 fiscal years. And that is within the current biennium. So with that, staff is looking for direction.
Yeah. My mind is not closed on this subject, but I'm not convinced either.
So what else do we need to do in order to, I mean, I understand the legislature starts today, but I also understand that these bills, there's bill filings all the way up until March.
Yes, sir.
60 days.
Yes, sir. So we have 60 days to get the bill in. Since this would be a local bill, we do have certain processes that we do have to meet for that. So this is something we need to handle within the very near future.
Then would you communicate individually with the commissioners or with the court, and let's determine what other information we need, and then bring this back for another presentation in the next 2 or 3 weeks?
Yes, we'll do that.
Yes, sir.
Thank y'all. Thank y'all for taking the time to come over today.
So we have
Okay,
we have 2 other court-related issues.
Yes, we have a couple other items that we do, 4 other items that we need to run through. So first, the next item is support the statutory designation of County Criminal Court Number 6 as a family violence court. I have spoken with Judge Jones, who is in favor of this. She is the current judge on the bench in County Court Number 6. The only request is that this provision, which we will write this into law, that statutory authorizations of family violence court would begin on January the 1st, 2023.
I suspect Judge
John, why don't you come forward?
We're humbled to ask you to pass these out, but you're more than happy to nonetheless. Good morning, Commissioners Court. Thank you for having us.
Good morning,
Hi,
Judge.
Judge.
Also, thank you for allowing us to jump a little bit ahead. GK's going to hand you a piece of paper that looks like this, and this is the first of about an 8 to 10 page quarterly summary of case filings by type that demonstrates that domestic violence cases On this page, it looks like they're the second most prevalent, but actually, if you add in the terroristic threats and a number of the felony assault, family violence get reduced to misdemeanors, they actually, I would suggest, are routinely, monthly in our county, regrettably. The number one type of case filed are booked into the Tarrant County Jail. So we have one court that routinely has the highest docket, that's County Court 5, for no other reason than it is the largest number of cases filed by type, and so we think we've hit, and I do believe we have the capacity. With the remaining 8 county courts, we would be absorbing about 300 additional cases a year. Other counties of our size have 2 courts designated. Bexar County has them by statute. Dallas County, I believe, has them by practice that are dealing with domestic violence cases. So simply put, that doesn't mean court 6 would be unable to hear other types of cases, because obviously sometimes you get a defendant arrested for domestic violence who might have drugs on them or a weapon or something. So, but we would ask that we have this court also designated to give preference to domestic violence cases, because the need is clearly there. So that's simple explanation, but I'll yield for questions, and I'm requesting that a resolution be passed. I think I've been in a little bit of preparatory contact with one of our senators who has agreed to carry the bill, certainly if it's approved. And so I'm asking for a resolution so we can proceed with the posting. This would also be a local bill.
Now, this is something I absolutely support, and so I would move approval of the resolution.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
The second item is pertaining to magistrates. It would, right now, the statute currently sets their salary at 90% of the base pay of a district judge, including the supplement. I'm in my 29th year on the bench in Tarrant County, and for many years, and with the state just approving the tiered system, and I'm not complaining. I would still be here even if it was the pay that I started with back in 1991. But
Ellen, make a note of that.
Well, the law prevents you from reducing it, so I can say that with some freedom. But I mean, our magistrates. I'm trying to think of Judge Webb has been with us for a while, so there's a little bit of ambiguity now in how we treat magistrates with respect to their longevity. And the simple thing I'm asking for is to just remove a cap that was put in our statute, and there are other counties of similar, smaller, and bigger sizes that just say that the pay of a magistrate is to be determined by the Commissioner's Court, and that's essentially where I'm headed with this bill. You could say that when it says 90% of a district judge's salary, well, it doesn't prevent at which level you have to tie that to, or you could take the very conservative view and say that means a brand new district judge, but after years and years of service, I would hope we would be able to compensate some people based upon their experience, because judging is a learned practice. You do have to get in a groove, and there are things that come with experience, and we put a lot of responsibility on these magistrates, and so I'm just trying to basically get to a position where we have a situation where you can determine what fair pay for these people are. And I've also been consulting with a senator on carrying this bill as well. And I'll pause for, I'm requesting a resolution in support of this, and I'll pause for questions.
So let me ask a couple of questions about this, because I realize that the magistrates are doing a lot, but it's, and this is where you're gonna tell me I'm wrong, and I don't have any problem whatsoever with that, is I see this almost as here is a category of job qualification, and you're gonna stay within that category, and I realize that there's gonna be some change in what magistrates are able to do, but as we just heard Judge Gallagher say, you know, there's a whole lot of stuff they can't do. And so what they can do, it limits their whole job description. And so there you know, and when that happens in the county, there's a job evaluation committee that looks at it, and there's a floor and there's a ceiling as to what a particular individual can make. So part of my concern is that does this job fit into one of those categories? So that's question number one. And then on the other side of that, if we take off the cap, and let's say we either say they fall into the same year experience qualifications that the judges do, so that after they've been here so many years, they move up to another base. But y'all as judges don't make more after that first year unless the legislature comes in and adjusts the base.
Correct.
But we could be, if we're adjusting at a 3%, which is what historically we've done for elected officials, then after a period of time, and it wouldn't be a very long period of time, you could have magistrates making more than what the district judges were making, which is the problem. That what ended up happening was, because we were allowed to do whatever, you know, we didn't have caps on y'all's salaries for the longest time, the judges ended up making more than what the appellate judges were making, and, you know, the state said, no, that isn't right, in their opinion. And so as a result of that, they capped y'all.
Well, I have a different view of why the state did what they did, but that's not on the docket today. We'll save that for a cup of coffee. Well, the first question is, as you know, the magistrates, I'm going to use Judge Wynn as an example. Judge Webb could be another example. Our new magistrate, Judge Giordino, could be yet another example. They, in addition to their magistrate tasks, they're doing judicial research. They are doing a lot of things. But we have a lot of employees in the county whose skill is not based upon them receiving some recognition. So if I just accomplish removing the cap with a further study like we did for coordinators at some point, to determine what the progression of magistrate pay is going to look like, well, then that would be a starting point. But so I started, I believe my starting pay back in 1991 was $88,000, and in today's dollars, that's still pretty good money for many people. Judges would get pay raises about every 6 and sometimes 8 years before the legislature would adjust the pay rates. And so they've come up with this scheme, and I imagine in another 6 to 8 years there'll be enough pressure for all of these numbers to get moved up to some amount again. But in the interim, however, right now a magistrate would come in at a fixed amount and not have. Of course, there's still arguing over whether or not that would have to be tied to the starting district judge or some other pay. Our statute right now is really not clear on that. So it would remove the ambiguity and just put you in a position to set the salary or not approve a raise, or do whatever it is you would choose to do. But the way this cap works now, it was enacted at a time there was a different view of judicial pay. That has now been changed, and And so I just think as a matter of recruiting people of quality and character and respecting that they are part of the judiciary, that at some level, as decided by you, by this court, that you would have the ability to adjust their pay from time to time based upon their experience and other qualifications.
But in order to do that, we first have to remove the cap.
Yes, sir.
But do we have to remove it, or does the legislature have to remove it?
Well, the legislature has
Get
to.
the legislature
The
to
big
remove
we.
the cap.
And we have a willing participant who will do that with us. Senator?
They're studying it right now. If the first one is in the bag, with regard to the redesignation of the court, the second one is being studied, and I expect to hear back from them any day now. But I, with the help of our legislative person, we'll find a sponsor. And if nothing else, you should do it because you love me.
Are those Navy emblems on your mask?
No, sir, they are not. They're Tarrant County Criminal Court 9 emblem on my mask.
I couldn't tell. I thought maybe you were, donning a Navy mask.
I don't think so.
Be a Marine mask, right?
Here's the Marines.
That's what I'm kind of jigging in.
I'm always the Marines.
There we go.
We have landed.
Do I have, what do I hear?
So okay, that salary right now is at 140? Is that correct?
It would be 90% of 140, I'm assuming, so that would make it.
Well, right now, the statute
No,
would
Russell's-
require you to pay 90% of 158.
Okay.
It says with supplements.
So to even get to the point where we index it to
Is that
these
90?
experience
90,
levels,
78 an hour?
we've got to ask the legislature to remove the cap.
Yes, sir.
I move approval of the resolution.
Second.
We have a motion, a second. Any further discussion?
Judge, before we vote, can we have clarification from a legislative point of view on what exactly removing the cap would entail? Because right now, the statute reads, as the judge adequately pointed out, that it's the base pay, which is 140, plus any county supplement, which is $18,000, so it's 158 and 90% of that. So
Be 142.2.
right, 142.2. The issue is that if you're talking about just removing the cap, is that there is no that it would go just to the county commissioner's court to set it, or that you want to look at a starting place with the ability for annual raises? What exactly does removing the cap?
I think we better make this a local bill, or we're going to hit a whole lot more opposition.
And it will have to be a local bill.
Is the request not just simply to remove the cap, and then it would be up to the Commissioner's Court to make that determination as far as what the salary is?
Right.
That's what I
That's what the
understood.
motion
The
is.
proposed change is
Is that?
is that it would be, you basically strike out subsection B, and it basically says a full-time magistrate's salary will be determined by the Commissioner's Court, and then it also sets out guidance, which is already in the statute for paying, compensating part-time magistrates. And this statute is the exact statute that is in use by other counties. Not all other counties, of course, but some. I did look at some other statutes. So it would basically be to remove section B as it currently stands, 1 and 2, and it would leave us with a full-time magistrate salary is set by the Commissioners.
My motion was to approve the resolution as presented, and that's that.
Thank you, sir.
My second remains.
So we got a motion and a second that accomplishes what you're hoping to have accomplished. Any further discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, Judge.
The final two items. First one supports the additional use of federal funds to meet the public health needs of our community.
Move for approval.
Second.
We got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
And then the final item, support state and local programs to lower maternal and infant mortality rates in Texas.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you all very much. We'll bring
Thank you, Russ.
back an additional item for discussion.
Thank you, Russ.
Really appreciate it.
So what we're going to do, we'll put a policy statement together on each one of these, and then just simply bring those back and ask you to receive and file the documents, so we have the formal language in the record. Okay, members of the court, we can now go to the item A, as it relates to briefing. This is the current and emerging health issues. Your Honor, just a note, we just have a few audience participations on that. It looks like it's mainly call-in. In fact, it is call-in, and on this particular item, we should have two as it relates to those when we get to that point.
Fanny, before you start and run off, I need to talk to you privately.
No problem. Yes, sir. Well, good morning, everybody. So we're here with our briefing for COVID-19. First off, the bad news, the situation with the outbreak continues to escalate. Tarrant County is now above 180,000 cases. And as you can see, the holiday numbers, with the people gathering, certainly is showing up in our case counts. 1,762 deaths altogether. I think that's 30 new deaths to report. Our hospitalization uptrend also continues. We're at 1,469 people in Tarrant County hospitals that are confirmed COVID cases. And that's about 31% of available bed capacity. That's a lot. In terms of people being in the hospital, that number is close to 38 or 39%. So one disease is overpowering our hospital system quite a bit. 311 of those are in the ICU. That's about 60% of our ICU capacity. And 17 beds remain in Tarrant County ICU. So the good news in all of this is that the hospitals have been able to manage. They're triaging very well and keeping ahead of ICU capacity being completely run out. But the bad news is that means they're having to triage and make decisions. Somebody who would have normally qualified for ICU care is now being told, we're going to manage you outside of the ICU because we're starting to get full. So they're getting to the most critical and having to ration ICU care, which it happens, but again, these are things that we worry about because when somebody needs ICU care, they need ICU care, and there should not have to be two thoughts about it. Our TSA-E, which is the 19-county region, is 27% consumed in hospital capacity with COVID. That's 3,899 confirmed cases in our 19-county hospitals. We're 80% above the threshold set by the governor at 15%. And 46 ICU beds remain in that 19-county region. Same thing, all the area hospitals are having to do that rationing of care for ICU to stay ahead of not completely being full. Trends, obviously, there's no slowdown in sight. These are hospital trends. On the left is Tarrant County. As you can see, the numbers are just climbing. And on the right is the TSA-E chart. And you can see the dotted line was the threshold, and we're quite a bit above that line, and no sign of slowing down at all. Our case trends continue to be higher. What blows my mind really is the one on the left. Typically, we don't see huge peaks on that because that's a very nice bell-shaped curve of how the cases occurred in our community. But to see a bar that peaked above 15,000 in a week, that's tremendous. Usually we see that on the reporting side because reports come at all times. Some are delayed, some are timely. And on the right, you can see that's more of a caseload on how the public health department and others are having to deal with that. And those are starting to approach 20,000. I think one week we had 19,000 and some change, another week 18,000 and some change. So that's a volume of work coming to a lot of us. Case rates, no sign of slowing down. We're at 793 per 100,000 cases in our community, or 100,000 people in our community. And that's almost 8 times the threshold set by the White House Task Force, that you're in the red zone if you're above 100 per 100,000. And again, like I said last time, that's with some science. Most diseases stay below 100 per 100,000. And then mortality data, as you can see, now we've surpassed our peaks set in July and August. Certainly the death data is a laggard. We've talked about it. It just follows several weeks later once the cases have surged. And what worries me is the surge has not subsided. So in July there was a surge. It was short-lived, 4 to 6 weeks, and we saw that dip. So the cases, the deaths peaked in August, and then we saw that decline along with it. But now we've had a sustained surge for almost a couple of months. So my fear is that we're probably going to see some more deaths add on, and that is not good for our community. Our COVID-like illness trends, just a little dip here, but we've seen that before, but we're at about 15 or 14% in the CLI numbers. Influenza-like illness, as you can see, the blue line is starting to perk up, but it's staying pretty low. And this is not the only illness that is staying at bay. There are other things. Usually around this time we see a norovirus outbreaks in long-term care facilities and other places, senior centers. We're not seeing a whole lot of those. There's some, but it's not a whole lot because all the protective measures that were supposed to keep COVID at bay all across the country are keeping several viral illnesses at bay. So it's a trade-off, but it does work when the measures are in play. A striking number on the positivity rate. We're at the 30% positivity rate in Tarrant County. That's 1 in 3 people getting tested coming back positive. And I know there's been a lot of people, oh, you're doing more testing so you're finding more numbers. No, this is the truth. This is a case finding tool. There's disease out there and it's being found because we have ample testing being done, and still there are 30% coming back positive. A couple of things that we occasionally talk about, but not on a routine basis. You all have heard about the R0, the replication rate of the virus in the community. We're at a very high rate right now of 1.22. Typically 1 or below is when the outbreak is declining and the number of people infected by one person is declining. Anything above 1 is that one person is infecting more than 1 people, and the outbreak is going to keep growing. 1.22 doesn't sound like a whole lot, but that's very high for our COVID outbreak. We typically haven't seen that number. And our doubling rate has started to decline quite a bit. So we were at 99 days just a few weeks ago, and now we're at 53 days. What that means is the virus outbreak has accelerated in our community. We were at half our cases 53 days ago. So there's been that much acceleration. And I've shown you the chart on how many days it took for 10,000 cases to occur. I didn't have room to fit it in there, but in the last couple of weeks, there has been days where only 3 days to add more 10,000 cases. So that is very fast. That's a lot of disease activity. It's hard to look at that and not feel emotion that this is happening in our community. So what can we do together? Again, when somebody's eligible in the party groups, they need to get vaccinated. That is almost a guaranteed way. If all of us participate, then we will beat back this pandemic 1 vaccine at a time. And that's a sure shot way to get out of COVID. Other things we know that work, but they have their limits, is wearing a mask, maintaining a 6-foot distance from others, and washing hands. And all those 4 things combined are the recipe to get out of this COVID outbreak. Vaccination efforts, and I'll pause here if you all have any questions on any of the information shared. Yes, sir.
Quick question, are we screening or doing anything for this new strain?
Yes, sir. So our lab is part of the Laboratory Response Network, and they work with a state lab. And CDC is currently working with state labs to check on surveillance samples. I don't know that they're going to go and look for every single one of the cases, whether it's a variant or not, but they are doing surveillance across the states. You all heard the news, Harris County had their first diagnosed case with the UK variant. The general assumption is that it's here in the US because the surge is happening all across the country. So I'm assuming there's some variant strains as well across every state. It's been found in several, not just in Texas. So vaccination efforts update. So our interest in the vaccine remains high. So that's great news. We had the Group 1A eligibles and Group 1B eligibles, and the interest for sign-up is pretty strong. We have 281,000 people registered on our portal. 238,000, almost 85%, are currently eligible under 1A and 1B. So that's very good news. But, that's the initial rush. After that, I think the long haul work's going to come in to engage the community, make sure they're getting signed up and getting vaccinated as general public becomes eligible. Between our partnerships with Arlington and Fort Worth and us doing the work, we've done about 23,000 doses in a matter of about 12 days or so. So that effort's going well. So we tend to be the leaders in North Texas. We got a little bit of recognition from our governor and from DSHS. They have called us one of the 28 hub sites across the state. So they've pivoted on the plan. I think I explained to you there was a distributed effort to get vaccine everywhere. But what they were finding was either the reporting is not happening correctly or vaccine was not getting out fast enough. So they've identified 28 leaders across the state to become these hub sites that are going to get bulk doses of the vaccine. And Tarrant County Public Health and THR Hospital System in Tarrant County are the two hub sites. And I'll explain a little bit more as we go along. DSHS dashboard issues continue. They only show 42,000 doses delivered, which is not true because on the public entity side, they're only showing 11,000 delivered, and I just told you we have given 23,000 or so. So I think the numbers are running at about half.
How do they show that we've administered 42,000 when we've only administered 23?
No, so they're talking about all of Tarrant County. The 23,000 was just Public Health, Arlington, us combined, the public entities that I can get data from. So if you just look at that portion on the DSHS dashboard, it's showing 11,000 and some change. So if our numbers are showing it at a 50% rate, I'm assuming the county's numbers are at a 50% rate. So 42,000 for the entire county, everything included.
All the pharmacies, all the nursing homes,
All the hospitals.
all of the hospitals.
Correct.
All of the. 'Cause
Right.
I know that 2 weeks ago, we had 52 different locations in Tarrant County that had gotten vaccines. Some of them many of them had gotten 100, 200. Those were all of the pharmacies. But then the other hospitals and everybody else had gotten it. But we had 52 different locations that showed having received vaccines.
Right, and that number is growing. I think this week they're going to do a little bit of a pause on that. They had a few locations, I forgot to count, but the hub plan is kicking off. And so anyways, the point is that, that number is low. We know it's not accurate. I'm not going to keep showing because it's on their public dashboard, but in my view, I think we're almost double that amount being given out in the county. And I don't know, Your Honor, if you wanted to make a comment about the governor's visit yesterday and what he shared about what's happening.
His comment, his statement was, we're simply almost touch passing. When we get vaccines in, we automatically distribute those vaccines out. He is very focused on the big mega hubs. At the same time, he also recognizes that the small rural areas cannot set up a big mega hub. So he encouraged us to reach out to some of our counties, surrounding counties, and he did that last week when I was talking with Chief Kidd at Tatum. And I reached out on Friday to 10 of our surrounding counties: Ellis, Johnson, Somerville, Hood, Erath, Palo Pinto, Parker, Wise, Montague, and Cook, and communicated and talked with each one of the county judges. We sent them a link. We asked them to register on the Tarrant County side, and your registration is great because a part of that is you have to say what county do you live in, and there's a drop down that has all 254 counties listed.
Yes.
And what the governor was very specific about is, you can go to any county and register and go there and then wait for your appointment. Now, that doesn't mean you just register and go. You register and wait to be called for your appointment, but you kind of put in the line from that perspective. And I'm hopeful that over the next week, we can get our IT people to be able to give us numbers on a daily basis. You know, I've heard you say before, get the IT people to create the form and then just populate it every day. But I'd like to know how many people have registered from other counties, how many appointments we've given them, and how much we've vaccinated. Now, eventually, after we've gotten everything working smoothly here, and as long as the state can continue to send us vaccines, I would love for like THR or a hospital within some of those counties to be able to act as the recipient of vaccines, and maybe us be able to actually give those vaccines out in their county. But at least in the meantime, it allows the first responders to get their vaccines by traveling here, or some of their residents that are, more in need, older, or have many underlying health conditions. I will say that this morning I heard a couple of the mayors from Ellis County, as well as some folks out of Johnson County, saying, well, golly, we don't have any place to go. Again, when I sent the information to the county judges, I gave them a link that they could send out. But I hope that the press will also help in communicating with those other counties, that they can go to Tarrant County's website, they can read the eligibility, and then they can go ahead and register their folks.
Absolutely. And I do want to cover some of that. So the progress that we've made. Last week when I came before you, we had 2 sites running. One was in Arlington, and the other one was at the Resource Connection. And of course, the demand was so high that we had long lines. But over the last week, we've made quite a bit of significant progress. Some of that is through public entity collaboration, and some is with public and private partnership. So, of course, the Arlington site got a lot of kudos and recognition yesterday with the governor being there. I think last week our judge and Judge Jenkins from Dallas and Judge Eads from Denton visited as well, along with their public health departments. They wanted to see how the Arlington site was being run. So a lot of credit goes to Arlington for standing up a mega site that's very capable, very smoothly run. But there's been other partnerships that have developed. So we worked with the city of Fort Worth and opened Bob Bolin as the Alpha Pod last week. And again, everything stays in transition. The original intent of the Alpha Pod is to do first responders, police, fire, EMS. But as those numbers start to shrink, we're slowly starting to invite other governmental workers through those locations, whether they're city staff, county staff, other cities across the county. So the goal is to keep the flow going, not just wait for one group. Ultimately, there might be other public folks going. So it may lose its Alpha Pod designation and may become a public site. We just have to keep transitioning to keep the flow going. But currently, at that location, we're seeing about 700 a day people invited. Some people don't show. I mean, that happens. So like yesterday, we did 571 vaccinations there at that location, along with our Fort Worth partners. And more capacity is available. They're not trying to overload themselves, as everybody sort of knew in doing that work. But I think we're probably comfortably saying that 1,000 a day is a good capacity there. We'll test it and see if more can be handled. There are other locations in consideration in Fort Worth, and the goal is to find locations and work on them at about 1,500 to 2,000 a day. The idea is to have, even though we're creating what we would call mega sites, we still want them distributed enough so that people don't have to travel from very far and stand in long lines, that there's enough locations available that people have choices. And then today, we're launching another mega site. It's the Northeast Tarrant County mega site at the Hearst Convention Center. And I want to really just credit the magic. Some pixie dust got sprinkled somewhere, because 14 cities in the Northeast have come together and they've helped us stand up this mega location at the convention center. They are contributing staff, computer equipment. They're firefighters out of the NEFTA group, the Northeast Fire Department Association. They're helping out as vaccinators. So we have over 100 people, from their side, and then of course public health staff, getting this location up and ready. Today is a soft launch in the afternoon, only about 300 people just to test the flow.
Well, I talked with the mayor this morning,
Yes,
and
sir.
I think they actually started this morning. The mayor had been vaccinated. He's much older than what is required to
Yes, sir.
qualify. Much older.
Yes, there was a closed pod this morning to work out the kinks and make sure everything's going.
And
for
he
the
said
public, yes.
everything was going very smoothly, and that they felt like that by the end of the day, they would be up and running very smoothly and be ready to really get into, doing what we're hoping to be 1,800, 15 to 1,800, or 2,000 a day.
Right, and this week, we're gonna keep it sort of ramping up slowly. So the goal is today, 300 for the public. Tomorrow, we start with about 1,400 invites, and then ramp up to about 1,800. So 200 added on every day, not to load up the system. And then next week, if everything is okay this week, we go to full volume. Currently, at most of our sites, we're seeing about an 80% show rate. Some days are better, some days are worse. So to get to a 2,000 number, we'll probably be inviting 2,400 people on a daily basis.
And I think the important thing to realize, we heard that from Arlington.
Yes,
that, we would book 2,200, we'd have 1,800, 1,900 that would show up.
Yes, sir.
There's just a couple of things. First off, yes, you have to have the appointment. But two, if you get an appointment, there will be a vaccine there for you.
Yes.
And so what Arlington has said is, you allow people to come anytime during the day. They have a tendency to show up in the morning, so the lines are a little bit longer in the morning. And, what Chief was saying, by, middle, late afternoon, there's no line whatsoever. And I've had a number of people who've told me they've gone to Arlington, from the time they got out of their car to the time they got back in their car was about 40 minutes. And remember, you got to wait 15 minutes after you get the vaccine before you leave.
Right.
So, if you get an appointment, you've got a vaccine there, come and get it. Now, I know that a lot of reason, I think, for the no-shows is that people are looking and trying to get that vaccine wherever they can. And so a lot of times they may have already found another place to have been vaccinated by the time they get the call with the appointment. I hope that soon, as these people show up at other locations and get the vaccines, that there could be a way that that provider could go into your system and pull them out of your list so that we don't have the percentage of no-shows.
We can create an area for them to notate that. It's just going to be very hard to, because providers have so many other things going on. Sometimes it's even required reporting doesn't get completed, and this is going to be more voluntarily a friendly effort. So those that are in partnership with us, we can try to work with them, but general providers is going to be sort of a hit or miss. So other things that are happening, we have a private partnership. I think y'all might have seen on TV yesterday. Mr. Berdan from THR was there with us. That's the THR health system. They have really stepped up to the plate and started to help us with this joint effort. Today they're launching 3 sites. One is in Fort Worth, another one is in Lake Worth, and a final one in Bedford. They're all going live today. Capacity at each site is about 500 a day to start. The goal is, so that's 1,500 among the 3 sites. Their goal is to increase that capacity to 2,500 a day. So right now, we've been able to transfer over 7,000 people to them, and their goal is to get them done this week. So people are already getting appointments from THR. We've sent messages to all those participants that we've expanded our relationship to get vaccinations done fast. So we're working with THR, and some of you may be receiving, messages from THR on how to proceed with an appointment. So we're all starting to work real fast. All in all, there are about 7 sites now running, 3 with THR and 4 through our partnerships. So there's a lot of effort that has been pulled together in 1 week to ramp up vaccination efforts in the community. And the central point of entry is starting to become our website, the www.tarrantcounty.com/COVIDshot. That doesn't mean every private provider and every pharmacy is working with us, but our hope is that as the effort grows, we have at least multiple partners. JPS is starting to work with us and take some clients from that registry too. So the idea is that we work away at the huge line that has registered with us already, and that way we can get done quicker with them because they've shown interest, they've done their part. Now it's our job to get them immunized as soon as the vaccine comes out.
I also know that in talking with Robert, that they are trying to especially in their Stop 6, Como, and Diamond Hills clinics, call folks who are qualifying under 1B and seeing if they can't get them in to get the vaccine. So they're being proactive regarding that, as well as looking at the folks who are coming in for other reasons and doing that. So hopefully, they'll be able to do 700 to 1,000 vaccines a day in their various clinics. I've also asked them to look at Northeast as well as Arlington and the new medical homes that they have there, so that hopefully very quickly they could get up to doing somewhere between 1,000 and 1,500 vaccines per day, in addition to these other places that you've mentioned.
Absolutely. And so after the
Danny.
capacity, yes, sir.
How many shots a day are you giving at Resource Connection?
So it varies on the day. Yesterday we gave out about 840. Today we're going much faster. So already I think at 11 o'clock we had given out 400. Yesterday we had pulled some staff to help train at the Hearst location because we had all these trainings going on. And as luck would have it, a couple of computers went down back at Resource. So by the time these folks were shipped back, there was a long line. It got resolved at the end of the day. We still were able to get through 840 or so folks. But the highest day we've seen is about 1,440. But that does create some lines because that location doesn't, it's not conducive for a lot of throughput. But today is moving much faster because we have enough resources there. IT equipment for us is working great, no issues. So things are well.
And remember, that place was set up as an alpha pod for first responders and was expanded when the governor opened up 1B. And I do want to applaud your folks for the way you have accommodated the curves that are being thrown at you, because I think it's hard for us to remember that 3 weeks ago, last Wednesday, the first vaccine of Pfizer was given in Tarrant County.
Yes, sir.
And so all of the stuff, what seems like now 6 months ago, has all occurred within the last 3 weeks.
Yes. Yeah, thank you, because the team does appreciate it, and they do watch this presentation, so thank you for that.
Vinny, y'all done a great job from where we were a week ago.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Vinny,
Thank you for
you have done a
the
great
GK,
job.
You and your people, thank you.
You have done a great job.
Thank you, sir.
And I am thrilled that things are going so well in Arlington and that things are going so well in Hearst. But things are not going so well in inner city Fort Worth. And I would like to see the same effort go into putting shots in arms in that community that's going on in Arlington and Hearst.
Yes, sir. You're absolutely right, but combined between Bob Bolin and the Resource Connection,
Bob Bolin is just for first responders. You
yes,
can't count
that is true, but it frees up Resource Connection for the public. So it's a split. That way, Resource Connection is not overloaded. But you're right. So more efforts are underway. There are sites that are in consideration. And Mr. Manius, if you want to kind of elaborate, I know you visited with me on a few of these locations.
So we are looking at several different sites in Fort Worth. And hopefully, we had one that was over very close to Farrington Field that we've looked at. That should be about 1,500 to 2,000.
It's the Billingsley basketball arena.
But I do want to make a comment. Whenever we talk about the lower income areas that need more and more assistance, I think we're going to need to also really coordinate with our partners and encourage our partners such as JPS through their clinic system to call their clientele that are part of the JPS connection and get those individuals in, because that's like a medical home to those individuals, which it is. And they have confidence in those medical homes. And I think that is a way that we need to really explore to push things out to a much greater extent to the lower socioeconomic groupings.
GK?
Yes,
Yep. And I know you've had conversations, but has anything firmed up with Tarrant County College
on their facilities, either the Northwest Campus or the Trinity River Campus?
We're looking at areas basically which would be west of 35, because all of our centers now, except for Bowling, are east of 35. So we need to make sure we get coverage there. We have looked at the Northwest facility, or at least explored that particular area to get some more testing out in that area. You know, Commissioner Brooks, all I can say is that we're working to get these sites set up. And but there's, and I'll say it again, there's several things we need to be aware of. One is the amount of resources to set up a site. And I think that we're very rapidly getting to a point where we're getting more resources to do that. One thing that I have a concern about is the availability of the vaccine itself. You know, we try to get all these sites set up, but we received 9,000, THR received 9,000, some of the hospitals have received some, but if you just heard the numbers that we're talking about here, we're going to consume those, and that's a weekly supply.
Yes, sir.
And we'll run through those in a couple of days because of how many shots we're giving out. So we need to, I know the governor's office said they were going to be sending a lot more. These big sites, these 28 big sites, if each of those only get 9,000 shots a week, then that's not a lot. That's not a lot of vaccine. You know, we also need to encourage our hospitals, because they have clinics and they have smaller hospitals out in these other areas. They need to be a part of the distribution piece also. And I know that we're working with those. We're working on bringing on some additional sites, and we're also trying to make sure that we have the resources to staff those sites and provide the technology. I think we've got the technology issue worked out, which was a big leap from last week. It's just the manpower to operate the sites themselves.
I would again encourage you to be creative in what you look at as a mega site. There are some mega churches that could make good vaccine distribution sites, churches, synagogues, mosques. If we really want to be in the community giving these shots, then we need to use large facilities that already exist in those communities, and they may not be public facilities,
Understand?
but they are facilities with which we can form partnerships and collaborations, and they got members.
Well, I mean, it's no different than the approach that we take with evaluating locations to when we are hosting elections. I think we're going to have to get a lot more granular, which obviously I know we're working towards that. And I appreciate the comments made about reaching, you know, the underserved community. And yes, that's hugely important. But it's a lot more to it. And honestly, I think it's really a reflection of our culture and how we appropriate resources. So I went to the Arlington site on Friday. I've gotten feedback from constituents and also those elsewhere in the county who went to go get their vaccine there. I'm going to read a few of those. Commissioner, my wife and I arrived at 12:30 Thursday, got the vaccine, and we're leaving the parking lot in 1 hour. Fire department had it well organized. Another says, my 91-year-old mother and my immunity-compromised husband and I were part of the lucky ones receiving the vaccine at the eSports Center this morning. We found it to be a great experience, very well run, and we're honored and humbled to be part of history in receiving the vaccine. So while I'm sharing complaints, I want to be sure to also share some compliments, and there are more compliments. But as I witnessed in observing the operations there, which it was very well run, I was maybe there 35, 40 minutes. In that amount of time, I saw a long line of folks that were there to get their vaccine. And of the hundreds of people that I saw, there was one African-American woman. And I certainly, I want to make it very clear that whoever needs the vaccine and wants the vaccine should certainly get the vaccine. But there's a huge disparity there, and it's just not acceptable. I know the work that you all do in public health is central to ensuring equity and access in public health. But there's more that we need to do. So as we're ramping up, then I do want to see a comprehensive plan of how we're going to work to reach our communities of color, and then also other communities who either because maybe they're shut in or other ways to where even with the locations that we have, they're not going to be able to access them. So I know we're getting there, but I just want to make it really clear that my heart was broken in seeing that there were people missing from that line. And I haven't gone to view the other ones. I certainly want to do that. I want to make sure that I understand what the experience is like for our residents. And, regardless if they're Tarrant County and people who are coming in from elsewhere, because every site is not going to be run the same, right? And I understand there's still a tremendous amount of anxiety about what to expect and what it's going to be like. But we've got to do better. Absolutely got to do better. And me saying it means something. We need other people who don't look like me saying the exact same thing. COVID has disproportionately affected communities of color. So that means that we're going to have to dig a little deeper and try harder when we are working to get these resources, the vaccine and other resources, to those very same communities. I know you're going to share some information on the updated demographics, which, yeah.
I don't disagree with either of y'all and what you're saying, but I think what we're looking at, and again, I want to remind everybody, we're 3 weeks into the deal. We were the first one to create a mega center. And we did that based upon the state saying that is where the vaccines were going. The deviation that we've made from even there is that THR has been considered and targeted or tapped as a mega center. Unlike Arlington, their vaccines are going out right now, at least in the very beginning, at 4 different clinics. And so I see that as being it's a whole new approach to the mega centers. So I see us doing it in stages. So first week, which was 2 weeks ago, we opened up Arlington as a mega center. Today, we're opening up 4 clinics out of a mega center called THR, which is then going to expand to other ones. And at the same time, we're doing JPS, opening up and calling folks, which is exactly the solution, I think will be the solution for those folks who, one, are not technologically either equipped to do it, or who just don't simply understand exactly what is out there. So,
or don't have the access.
Or don't have the access. And so that's kind of a variant off of what the state has said they want us to do, which is a big location. And what we're saying is, and what we will continue to say to them is, just what y'all are saying, we've got to find another way to get it out there. But it is not going to happen. I mean, we're going to probably be doing it this way for a couple of weeks, and then there'll be other things, whether it may be going out into the churches and going out into the other centers. So, I think we're making progress.
We're making progress, but you now have 2 commissioners asking for a plan. That's a groundswell.
Well,
listen to it.
Roy, what I'm going to tell you is if we do too much deviation from what the governor has said to do, we will not have vaccines to do what we're doing currently, let alone any additional ones, because the emphasis right now is vaccines in the arm.
But there's a plan being worked on, so Mr. Menees, if you want to comment on that too.
Well, I'm just saying,
Let me put him on the spot.
This could be all part of, I certainly don't want to do anything that is going to diminish our ability to get as many vaccines as possible. But let's just take a map of Tarrant County, right? We've got heat maps that show the positivity rate and, where COVID is and things like that. So you overlay where 1A, 1B is right now, overlay that with demographics, race and ethnicity, overlay that with where the test sites are, where are the gaps, right? And then what do we need to do to get person to vaccine that would still be in keeping with what we understand for now today is the governor's priority for this hub-centered approach. It's not that complicated. Now, I get that it's gonna take a lot of work and it's gonna be things to figure out, but obviously, in what's been stood up already by Vinny and other folks, and the same conversation that we had last week where everyone was hooting and hollering about what wasn't being done and what needed to be done, we're just having an extension of that very same conversation. It should not be any different because we're talking about people of color.
So let us tell you what we've done so far as the plan, because that was something, that was an issue that was raised last week. So we contacted UNT Health Science Center and asked them to work, and we included Commissioner Brooks on that conversation because Commissioner Brooks was the one who raised that particular issue. They have some very talented individuals that have been working on the national level on the Warp Speed program. And so we have their expertise also. We asked them to put a draft together so that we could begin sharing that with you. And because it's not something that they're going to simply hand as a plan. They're asking, we talked about consulting type deals, we're getting their expertise. We should have that this week. And we'll be bringing that to court. Commissioner Allen, I understand what you're saying as far as how we go about looking at different sites and issues that affect each one of those sites. And that should very well be part of the plan. At the same time, we need to make sure, and I don't think there's going to be that much deviation from what everybody wants, including the governor, to basically get these vaccines out. We're moving quickly. I think you can see the fact that we've been in this thing 3 weeks, and look where we are now. We're not going to be here in 3 weeks. We're going to be much farther out there. We change almost every day on how we approach things. And so we understand, we hear what everyone is saying, and we're moving fast to get you what you want. Now,
it's not what I want. It's what the community wants. It's what the community deserves. Because guess what my constituents tell me? That we don't have a problem figuring out their address when we need to send them a tax bill.
Yeah.
So we can't make it that much more complicated when we have been deemed the provider of this very valuable resource, is my point.
And Commissioner, when I used the word you, I was not directing that at you.
I just needed to get that out.
Yeah. Okay, now, we understand what the Commissioner's Court strategy is looking toward going to.
Sure.
And that's serving every member of this community. And
equally.
So, yes. Equally. And so that's where we're going with this. We work on it every day, and hopefully we'll be able to start showing you some different strategies as we move forward.
And a couple of comments. I know it's not very obvious from the slides, but the THR location is Fort Worth, is in an underserved area. It was specifically picked. Originally, there was discussion about even just limiting to a certain zip code. And we got a little, let's get this in a hurry and do the analysis a little bit later. So let's get the people getting going because the list was growing. And you'll see when I show that, the 3 JPS locations are in prime locations where the need is. And on our registration efforts, the numbers are starting to grow. So that's good. It's still low on where we need to be. Now, vaccine given out, the data is only coming from public health. That does not show data from JPS or THR or Arlington or other places. So our numbers of vaccine given out are still pretty much the same. The numbers have grown, percentages haven't changed. So let me show you that. But there's hope.
Before you go on, let me say this, and I want to complete my conversation with you, Commissioners. One of the things that we're looking at in our office is to look at the same strategy, not only how we did the census, but also how we're doing the rental assistance, so we can reach those individuals that may not have access, like some of us do.
Right.
And so those are the type of strategies we're trying to use. We're also looking at things like, very simplistically, flyers in grocery stores and convenience stores, things such as that to make people aware of where they can go to get a vaccine, or at least who to contact. A telephone number, and I think Commissioner Brooks, you referenced a telephone number in your in the media, and which was on today's paper. Those are the type of things, somewhat more simplistic ways of reaching out. to make sure they get the information, but as effective as anything else. And so we're working through all of those strategies.
Great.
So, again, vaccination efforts coverage by city. As you can see, a lot of Fort Worth residents, even though there appears to be 2 smaller sites, I wanted to be very clear, bulk of the vaccination is going on and happening with Fort Worth residents. Almost 45% of the doses we've given out are for Fort Worth residents. So, Commissioner Brooks, I know you were concerned about efforts in Fort Worth, but the people are getting the vaccine. Arlington actually has dropped a little bit from 9% to 6%, but that's okay. I think we're going to be catching up. You know, there's undulations every week, and the data is going to change, and we'll all catch up eventually.
Well, and Arlington was charged to be the key point of distribution for everything east of 35.
And the thing is, that was for, originally we had divided up the cities for first responders, but as the 1B group opened up, we're sending people everywhere. That way, you know, there's no waiting. If you've got capacity, you take them. We've got capacity, we take them. It will eventually sort of clean up as we have more sites, because then we have the ability to sort of say, okay, from these cities or these zip codes, send here. But right now, so many things are in flux that if you do that analysis and put everything in play, you got to wash that off next week and start over. So we're letting the dust settle a little bit on where the locations are so we can drive traffic appropriately.
On that slide, what does the 78% refer to?
So that's, vaccine coverage by city, that's showing 78% of the vaccine is going to most of these locations, and then the rest are really small. Like on a percentage basis, 0.1%, 0.2%.
Okay, so you're saying to the other 30-something cities
yes,
that we have in Tarrant County.
Yes, so that means there's need out there as well, that we need to have locations out. So the THR location in Lake Worth is going to help at least start the coverage in the northwest side of the county so people don't have to go all the way. So there's a lot of work, obviously, that we all need to do and get the vaccine out at every corner, like you said last week. I mean, that is still a worthy goal, and that's how it's going to get done. It's not going to get done by everybody coming to one spot.
But Vinny, it also points out Fort Worth makes up about 40% of the population of Tarrant County.
Yes.
So again, we are spreading that out all over the county, and to a great extent, we're if anything, we're following, Arlington, for example, represents more than, I guess they're what, at about 8% of the, probably 9% of the overall population?
Right. Last week they were at 9%. I think this week they're falling behind, but they've done a lot of other effort as well. I mean, they're not saying just give me Arlington.
They're probably 20%.
Yeah. So they're letting us send them traffic from wherever, and it's based on when they registered in the system, and if we have availability in Arlington and some issues elsewhere, we send them to Arlington. And most people are happy to go, but of course there's some no-show, and it could be transportation issues. So we'll try to continue to address that with our planning efforts.
So, Vinny,
yes, ma'am.
If you go back to with this geographic, the coverage by city, as I had stepped away just briefly earlier, and Judge, I think you were talking about outreach to the other counties. So can we start to see a breakdown of what's Tarrant versus other counties? And
I will.
And it is all this part of like a greater dashboard. I've had constituents to ask for that, just as what we've provided, for COVID so far, and I think that'd be helpful.
And I wanted to share with you an insight too. So we were ahead of the curve in creating our dashboard, and then we were told that DSHS is going to have all of that. And as you know, we have limited resources, so I told my team, don't waste your effort. DSH is going to put it all out. Well, as you can see, their dashboard is not working well, so we're restarting the effort to gather everything. And so it took a little bit of a backseat for a little bit, but we're trying to get back out, and we'll have information available for everybody. I did actually pull a chart of what the county distribution is showing. It wasn't meaningful right now to share with you all. Most of it was Tarrant County. Overall, about 13% were out of county. And then there was a big chunk of 24% sort of unknown at this point, because originally when we were just limiting it to Tarrant County, there was no need to actually put the drop down saying you're Tarrant County or not. So we're going to go back and clean up that data to make sure, based on city and zip code, if we can figure out what county it is, and then we'll try to bring a more complete list and share that on a regular basis. So demographics, Again, not a whole lot of improvement on the age side. The numbers are starting to improve with the 65 and older. Last week, I think they were at 24%. This week, they're at 32%. So the 1B is starting to show an effect. But the 1B is also a lot of under 65 years with health conditions. And that age group is going to stay pretty large because of a lot of people with underlying health conditions are under 65. So improvements in numbers. The Hispanic population is still at 5%, but the non-Hispanic and Latino has declined. So I'm assuming that in the undeclared category, something's happened. So we'll continue to work on that. We've got efforts ongoing in Spanish translations and Vietnamese translations. So we're going to start that outreach effort. I know there's 3 different things tomorrow. I forget all of them, but one is at 7, another one's at 6, and then another one is at 7:30. But they're outreach efforts into African American community and the Latino community. So we're starting to do that. That's just one example of how we're starting to talk about the vaccine, get people comfortable, start with the knowledge on where to go, what to do. And then we'll expand on the outreach efforts. Yes, sir.
Benny, I know you just opened Hearst and some of these have just now opened, but how are you prioritizing the people who have the 235,000 people? I mean, are we sending somebody that lives in Mansfield to Hearst, or are we sending them to Arlington, or vice versa? How is that being done?
So the main prioritization that we're at this point worried about is whether they're in 1A or 1B. So 1A is moving very fast because there's a limited number of people. If you qualify under 1A and you register, typical wait time is about a day, at the most 2 days. 1B being a larger group, and I'll show you the traffic volume here in a minute, that is taking a while. And we are trying to apply geographic logic, but sometimes it's just, we need to get people to a location, so let's just send them. So it's a mix of both, but we are trying to apply that, and I think I tried to explain, we've done some work and then had to wash it away because more locations opened. So we're taking a little bit, let the location planning sort of settle before we lock everything in, because that's a lot of background logic to apply. That's a lot of man hours to put that in and then take it away because a new location opened. So for the next week or two till we sort of figure out the location, it's going to be a little bit of, hodgepodge that I live in South Fort Worth, but I'm having to go to Hearst. Shouldn't happen, but it is possible, and it's probably going to happen because we're taking thousands of people, and there's no time to check each person's address. We're just sending them a call out saying, go here. But it's been tried, and then we had to wash it off because new locations open. So we'll fix it.
Go back to that slide.
Yes, sir.
On the...
this one? Yes, sir.
On the bottom right-hand corner, black or African American, I assume it says, and there's a percentage associated with that?
Yes, sir.
What is it?
I believe it's gone up to 6%, and I will double check on that to make sure that's correct. Last week it was 3%. But I think it's starting to increase. Again, we got to start the outreach efforts to make sure. So
I know this week
if we
alone.
can't even get the number
I know.
shot for the presentation.
I pull these off at like 11 o'clock at night. Sometimes there's no time to clean up what I have. But I will make sure that we get that fixed, and that way the number stays current. But I have another slide that shows that.
And I want to make something clear in the remarks that I shared is this is not me being critical of public health.
Yes, ma'am.
Quite frankly, I'm being critical of everyone that has a responsibility in the decision-making process and how these resources are allocated. So I have a responsibility, as is everyone up here, as is everyone in public health, with the state. That's my point. And what I share with you is not new. I talked to GK about it. I've talked to Mayor Williams about it. I've talked to other elected officials, the folks who have decision-making and influencing power. So I'm not resting the burden of this on public health.
Yes, ma'am.
Any one of us that has a voice that has an ounce of courage needs to be saying what I said. And that's not to brag about me having courage in saying it, but we all know that it's an issue. And we all need to be talking about it. And quite frankly, communities of color need to see us all talking about it to know that we actually care about these issues.
Absolutely. And not to belabor the point, but as a public health person, it's frustrating. We know African-American community in Tarrant County has the highest burden of chronic diseases. So right off the bat, probably half of the community is qualified under 1B, and the sign-up rate is poor. So that's work for us to make sure whatever barriers there are no more. So we can get those sign-ups and get those folks immunized.
Sure.
Because that's where the disease burden was. I mean, we've seen it throughout the pandemic. So let me cover some of the improvements in registrations. That way you know that there's some effort starting to take place that's helping. So let's just look at the chart on the right first, because that's ethnicity. Even though in the data that we show, just through our clinics, only 5% of Hispanic or Latino folks have gone through. But I think overall, with our partners, the numbers are improving because our registrations are improving. 12% of Hispanic or Latino are starting to register through the website. Word is slow to get out, but it's getting out. So there's an improvement. Similarly, I want to see African American signups. It's not, on the left, if you see on the chart, let's see, African American signup is about 6%. And it's, if I correlate back to the other chart, I think I had seen that 6% was starting to show, but we'll continue to work on that effort to make sure that, those numbers are translated well. And again, it's just our data. We have to wait till DSHS fix their dashboard to see what's happening across the county. Or otherwise, if y'all have the way to get all of our providers to at least start giving us the data, because everybody's supposed to collect this information. We just are relying on DSHS because in their view, we're just one provider of vaccinations. So I don't have access to anything, across the county. We can only share with you what we have. And it's you can extrapolate if this is what public health is seeing, maybe that's what others are seeing, but that's a big maybe. Because some of them are in those locations, like I mentioned, JPS and THR's location. So my assumption would be that when you add the numbers, the picture is going to get a little bit more clearer. Vaccination efforts on first responders, and I think you had asked that question.
Yes.
Again, this is just through Tarrant County Public Health sites. I don't even have a breakdown from Arlington. And the reason is the sign-up system is where we have the most information. And once you start getting the vaccine out and getting into other systems, they don't capture that. So all we can tell you is these are the people that signed up and came through our locations. But as you can see, this looks very low, but I can tell you we sent a lot to Arlington, so the real numbers are quite a bit higher. Emergency medical services, 278, firefighters, 192, and I can guarantee you that number's low because a lot of them qualified as EMT paramedics, so they did go and get their vaccine. Law enforcement, public safety, about 1,900. Other government workers, 2,700. Healthcare, 3,945. And that's just through our sites, through public health. So a lot of work remains. These are estimates. But again, I go back and I'm not blaming. I mean, we're all in a pandemic, but DSHS dashboard is lacking in information that we all need. So either it gets resolved that way, or my team stays ready to work with other community partners to build a Tarrant County dashboard. But we can't force these partners to share the data with us. We've asked a few times, everybody's busy, so we're just sticking with what we've got. But your questions are very valid, and that will need the community to work with us so we can present to you what's happening in our community. So here's the final slide, because the question you all get, I get, and everybody gets, when can I get the vaccine? I signed up, and it's been 1 week, 2 weeks. So look at the startup. It was kind of slow. And then on the 29th of December, we had 21,000 or almost 22,000 people sign up. Good news is that we're almost through that day. Now we're on December 30th. There were 44,000 people signed up. And, between us and Arlington, we've given out 23,000 doses, so that took care of the 29th. We're just scratching the surface of December 30th. So that's why there's a long wait. Now, who gets first? 1A people have priority, so they get called, like I said, within a day or so. 1B is the huge bar of 40,000 people. It's going to take us a little while to get through just that day of registration. So that's why I was so excited when THR joined forces with us and started to help out, because now we can give them 7,000 a week, 10,000 a week. So it's going to eat away at that registration, and there's 281,000 people already registered. So it's going to be a little while. It's not just the effort of getting the vaccine out. Not enough vaccine is coming in. And you all heard the governor explain that yesterday, that even the state does not control that. It's the federal government and the manufacturing capacity. So that's where the frustration is. I know every office, whether it's county or city, even I'm getting from city offices as well, we were getting calls that we signed up a week ago, where's my vaccine? And I want to clear one more thing. One of the mayors reached out and they said, well, there's word on social media that you just have to call the mayor's office and you get ahead in line. And that is not true, because what's happening is, I'll tell you, there's somebody in court here yesterday, they just wanted to check a status, and I was going with you all to visit with the governor. So I said, okay, I'll get back to you. And by the time we got out of the meeting, that person had already gotten a call. I got a lot of credit for helping out, but I didn't even check on that person because I was with you all. So, it happens. The system is working. It's just, we got to be patient. Everybody will get their vaccine. I appreciate that there's a lot of interest, and we want to keep that interest going. But there are some things that are not in our control, and that is the availability of the vaccine. After that, we're trying our best to get it as fast as we can into people's arms, because we know where our community is. Our community is hurting with the disease burden, and this is a guaranteed way to break the pandemic, one vaccine at a time. So that's all I have. I'll be happy to answer any other process questions or anything you may have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Vinny.
Thanks, Benny.
Thanks, Vinny. We're going to take a 5-minute break. Okay, we have a couple of folks as far as calls go, and then the other stuff has to do with more, let's see, that has to do with a couple of other things. We have the masks, and then we have also 287G, so those will be later on. So I'm going to go ahead and make calls right now with regards to the COVID, the mask mandates, and things along that lines. The first one is going to be to Sherrod Perry.
Hello?
Mr. Perry, this is Judge Whitley, and we're at the point on the agenda for your request to talk with us about the COVID-19 government response.
Oh, okay. All right. Go ahead and get started?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. So the letter D in COVID-19 stands for disease. However, a high percentage of the people who have been diagnosed with COVID are actually perfectly healthy and show no symptoms. COVID-19 is supposedly caused by a virus that we call SARS-CoV-2. But even now, this virus, I'm convinced, only exists as a computer creation. Because, again, several Freedom of Information requests were sent to public health departments all around the world, and all of them had to admit that they had no physical samples of this virus available to them. And also, I've said in this courtroom that what we call viruses are basically just byproducts of poison cells and are actually completely harmless. But again, this viewpoint gets attacked. Many doctors such as Tom Cowan and Andrew Kaufman have explained this idea, but it gets suppressed by the medical industry because the virus myth is so profitable. Also, we have a test called RT-PCR, which stands for real-time polymerase chain reaction. And notice that out of those 5 words, the word test did not appear in any of them. And the inventor of the RT-PCR, his name is Kerry Mullis, he actually himself said that you shouldn't call this a test. It wasn't designed to detect infectious disease, but that's literally what it's being used for all around the world. Let's see what else. We have vaccines being rolled out that really shouldn't be called vaccines because they don't work the same way traditional vaccines work. They're using this mRNA technology, which is actually pretty complicated, which would make you think that there should have been more testing done before rolling it out. But in fact, the opposite is true. Many corners were actually cut to get these things rushed to market. So I'm not going to call it a vaccine, actually, for that reason. To me, it's more of an injection. It's an injection for
1 minute.
a so-called virus.
1 minute.
I'm out of time?
No, you've got 1 minute
Okay.
left.
Okay. An injection for a so-called virus, an injection that doesn't guarantee that you won't catch the virus. It doesn't guarantee you won't transmit the virus. And this is actually by the own admission of all the health officials and vaccine manufacturers themselves. They're telling you what it won't do and what it will do. And it won't protect you from very much, apparently. But still, we want everyone around the world to get it, apparently. What else? Bill Gates, who would love to have everyone vaccinated, he's also the leading funder of World Health Policy. He is not a medical doctor, period. Also, the Director General of the World Health Organization, Tedros, he is also not a doctor. In fact, he is the first non-physician to ever be the head of the WHO. So I'm summarizing it this way. We basically have a fake virus with fake tests, fake cases, fake vaccines, fake medical experts, which pretty much adds up to what I call a fake pandemic. So what is the reality?
Time's
the
up.
reality.
Time's up.
Time's up?
Yeah, and I'll call
right.
you back I'll call you back in a little bit with regards to your comments on your other information request. Thank you, sir.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Next is Robert Bucher.
Hello.
Robert, this is Judge Whitley. We're at the point on the agenda for your audience participation.
Okay. According to the mainstream media, we've had a couple of people die from this vaccine, which is, that's unacceptable according to, Vinny the fake Dr. Tanasia. Any one death is not good. So we need to look at a different direction on this. We need to look at going through some therapeutics. And after the grandstanding last Tuesday between all of y'all was just, outstandingly embarrassing for us as the people of Tarrant County. We'd really like to see y'all step down, especially after that. That was a fiasco. If y'all want to know why this virus is spreading, let me give you an insight into my job. An AP arrested person comes into our facility, right? They say they have the COVID. Guess what happens? We tell the officer, hey, you got to call MedStar. MedStar checks them out. If their vitals are not abnormal, they will not take them. So we got to come back in here with no medical. We have no medical, and we have to house them here and stay with them and sit here with no way to quarantine them. That's how it's getting spread. So why don't we talk to JPS about why they won't take them or why the sheriff's officers won't take them over there to get them tested? No, we won't talk about that. That's too much. And I don't know, Judge Whitley, why you're so hard about going after the bars when you yourself like the freaking martinis at Del Frisco, but we'll keep moving on from that, which everybody's losing their jobs.
I haven't been to
behind
Del
all this.
Frisco's in a long time, and I didn't have a martini when I went there.
Yeah. I mean, you keep lying anyway, so we already know that. We see that all over the news.
Hang up on that jerk.
Well, no, I'm going to go ahead and let him have his 3 minutes.
And Brooks, you were mentioned in the interview where minorities are questioned taking the vaccine. Why can't they question the unknown? If you're not familiar with who the minorities are, let me help you. Everybody that's lost their job is considered a minority in these days. There's no one particular minority, period. But yeah, we constantly have rodeos, this and that, this and that. We don't shut those down at all. I mean, I don't understand that. But yeah, why don't we shut everything down? If we're going to do it, let's shut all things down. But now y'all want to do that. Too much money. A federal mandate is an order requirement by the federal government, then a state or local unit of government to take some positive actions. So basically, the mandate is you can pick and choose on if you want to do it or not. So that's all I got to say on that.
Thank you. Have a good day. Moving right along.
So we have provided you with the weekly update on the Care for Tarrant programs, and we're not going to go over that. You can just simply look at it. You've seen a lot of it on Mr. Tenage's presentation. I would like to just make one point that while we're talking about the vaccinations, we continue to test individuals, and over this last week we tested over 23,600 additional people in Tarrant County for the coronavirus. What I would like to talk about a little bit is the new legislation that was passed, and really, and we're still trying to find out more and more about that legislation and what it really means and how it's going to flow down. But I'm going to ask Kristen to come talk with you all a little bit about the rental assistance program. And that'll be the only thing that we'll brief you on today, and then we'll move forward. Kristen.
Good afternoon, Judge and Commissioners. As GK said, we don't have a whole lot of legislative updates regarding the rental assistance that will be coming down, but I did want to at least share with you a few of the things we're doing in the meantime to get ready for this next round of funding and some of those areas of focus, which I'll share more details on in the coming weeks. The first is coordination with other direct recipients. So that's the cities of Fort Worth and Arlington, who are both getting their own direct allocation of funds for rental assistance. I've had several calls with them, and we will be coordinating to ensure some streamlining of the application and screening forms so that everyone in Tarrant County has one place to go to be directed to the correct application for their need, to suit their needs and their qualifications. The second thing is implementing IT solutions. That was one thing that caused us to lag a little bit in the first program. So I've been working with various departments to be sure that we've got the right softwares and things in place to ensure some smooth transitions and a better user experience for people who need assistance. The third thing is the consideration of partnerships, possibly third-party partnerships to help improve efficiencies, whether that's parsing out a piece of the funding for utilities or possibly partnering with other community agencies to make sure these funds are distributed in as quick a manner as possible. The fourth thing, assessing the need. Obviously, we're going to need to, no matter which portions of this remain internal, we'll need to staff up and make sure that we've got the right resources in place so that we don't fall behind in processing applications for this second round. Outreach is important. I know we've talked some about outreach today, but we do have some good data from the first program, so we know where to focus our efforts in the second round of funding, both to underserved populations and those who maybe did not apply in the first round of rental assistance. And then lastly, eviction diversion in coordination with the JP courts. So we've got a few conversations ongoing now so that we can gear up for both the Texas eviction diversion program, which we're still learning more about, and figure out how to utilize the funds we're getting to have people in the right place to intervene in that eviction process. So very quick overview, but we are working diligently to get things ready for the next program, and I welcome any questions you have.
No.
I don't have a question, but just, and I think I may have mentioned this before, I would be curious to see, based off of that campaign that that you and I worked closely on to develop, to seeing what was kind of the most effective. I know anecdotally, I think either you had shared or maybe I heard from others that the yard signs were actually really impactful. I know pretty much, anywhere that I'm driving, I still see the yard signs that are up. But just as the conversation earlier about outreach, those are the kind of things that we need to do across the county when we're looking to outreach to our residents, so that we're hitting people in all the different ways that people communicate. So one thing about the rental assistance, though, is I wanted to make sure I understood what's the the outstanding number of applications that we're still processing.
Yeah, and Commissioner, that's a very hard number to get to, unfortunately. There are a lot of nuances and circumstances around some of the applications. We do have a handful, and it's hard to know exactly how many where the landlord is not willing to participate. But we don't remove them from the system because we do still reach out and we do still communicate with those renters to provide other information. So their applications remain in our system. We have about, I know we have, as of yesterday, we had 988 applications that we are actively working through, and that means we think we have all the documentation we need for them. That number has been reduced drastically over the last few weeks as the team really works to get those taken care of by the end of the month. We'll see that number continue to go down. It's our hope that anyone who wasn't successful in getting either landlord cooperation or getting all their documentation to us in the first round will apply for the second round, and we will communicate that to them.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions? Thanks, Kristen.
Thank you.
Anything else, Mr. Manning?
Not on my section.
Ms. Glenn?
Move to receive and file the personnel agenda.
Second.
We have a motion second to receive and file the personnel agenda. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes. Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Caught you.
Thank you, and good afternoon. We have several items for the court this morning. I did ask Vinny yesterday at Mr. Maney's staff meeting to leave you all in a good mood, and he did not do what I asked. So here we go. So the second item, we're asking the court to approve an out-of-class pay extension for the tax office. You've seen this one before. We have an employee in the tax department who assumed the responsibilities of the property tax director. Tax has asked for one extension. We're now asking for a second extension. We're looking at a cost of approximately $5,200, but we're expecting the cost to be fully offset by salary savings. Tax does have a list, an eligibility list, and I think they'll be, we think, making a selection fairly soon.
Move for approval.
Second. We have a motion second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
So our next item is from yours truly, the Human Resources Department. My office manager, Ms. Valdez, retired at the end of last year. I've made a selection for replacement. I'm requesting a waiver of 304 vacation hours. We are estimating that with salary savings, however, we are looking at net savings to the general fund of approximately $6,600 and some change. That does include fringe benefits.
Move approval. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Did you skip number 3?
Number 3, we're holding until next week.
We're holding number 3.
Yes, sir.
Motion passes unanimously.
So next item, item number 5, we are asking for a waiver on behalf of the Medical Examiner's Office. Dr. Pirwani's Chief Forensic Death Investigator retired at the end of last year. Dr. Pirwani is requesting a waiver of 336 vacation hours effective the 13th of this month at a net cost to the general fund of approximately $8,400. That does include fringe benefits.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
The next two items, items 6 and 7, they are both requests for double fills as well as waivers. The first one comes from Precinct 1. Commissioner Brooks's Field Operations Director is leaving county service, I believe, at the end of February. Commissioner Brooks is asking for a waiver of 400 vacation hours as well as a double fill for the month of February. We're looking at a net cost to Road and Bridge of a little bit more than $53,200. That does include fringe benefits.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
And our last item, item 7, this comes from the Sheriff's Office. Their administrative manager is retiring at the end of February with 400 vacation hours. The Sheriff's Office is requesting a waiver of the 400 hours as well as a double fill through the end of February. We're estimating a net cost to the general fund of approximately $16,680 and some change, and that does include fringe benefits.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Lynn.
you. Judge, and if I could just convey to the court, my husband asked me to convey to the court that he was very appreciative of the ability to get the vaccine. He did go on to Public Health's website the first week, signed up, was there at the Resource Connection, I believe, the second day after he registered. He did stand in the line. I think it took him about 2 hours to get through the line. He was more than happy to stand in the line. He has underlying health conditions that makes him vulnerable to the virus. And so he's gotten his first dose, is scheduled to get a second dose. And again, he asked me to relay his thanks to the court, to Mr. Manius, and to Dr. Tanasia. Thank you.
And we are, I've gotten a couple of messages this morning about people who went out to Resource Connection today, in fact, and they got in and out in right at an hour. So we're making progress. Melissa, I don't know if I actually have an Alabama hat, even though, just kind of in honor of,
Well, at least you don't have to wear that
no, that's
hog head.
well, I was going to say, that's a stinking,
Arkansas hat there, so I may not have.
Well, you're gonna have to get one.
Did you go to Alabama?
well, I'm a little surprised.
Eric did.
We've got people in the county that are from Alabama, and I think they're in HR, and they'll probably be down here pretty quick now that I've announced it. But
Eric Ware was a graduate of Alabama.
is that right?
Yeah. Him and Jack used to have it out all the time.
Well, I bet they did. I didn't realize that. That's a real shame because,
Our money was on Eric.
yeah. Yeah, if I'd have been Jack, I'd have hated to have somebody from Alabama in there if I was rooting for
It was
Arkansas.
a love-hate, because you couldn't hate Eric. He was such a nice guy.
Yeah, we're gonna miss him.
Yeah, he will be missed.
Go ahead and present your thing. I do have 3 requests to speak regarding this issue, so lay it out and then I'll call these folks.
Okay. Well, good afternoon. I have one item for your consideration. It's an award recommendation for bid number 2021-30, annual contract for N95 and KN95 masks for public health, awarding to the primary, secondary, and alternate vendors listed in the court communique per unit price.
Okay, I believe that 2 of these folks are in person, and then there's one that's on a call. The first I have down is David Belargin. Is that anywhere near right?
You actually nailed it.
Oh, that's a
French
first.
is Belargin, but I don't speak French. Let's go by Belargin.
Can you raise up the mic?
Is that better?
Try to hear you.
First off, thank you for your time, Judge and Commissioners. My name is David Belargin. I have deep roots here in Tarrant County. My grandfather played baseball for the Fort Worth Cats. He sold cars at Jack Williams Chevrolet in Fort Worth. My father had 2 Audi dealerships here, one in Fort Worth and one in Grapevine, DFW Audi and Audi Fort Worth. It's where I grew up. I love Fort Worth. It's where I spent most of my life. And my business partner and I, after we sold our car dealerships, we started in the real estate business. In the beginning of this pandemic, both of us were kind of flabbergasted as to why the people we loved, my first son was being born, and our nurse didn't have the correct protection, and so we both decided this was a huge issue. And we didn't try to make money off the pandemic. We saw that there was a bigger issue at hand, is that why don't we have these supplies here? We found out that it's because 90% of them are made overseas, and they did. You can't blame them. When the cases got bad, China shut down the borders and said we're keeping this for ourselves, and that's why prices went up. There was a mad scramble to try to find the N95s, and so we did something about it. And we created an N95 manufacturing company here in Fort Worth. We're CDC certified, NIOSH certified, and there's only, you can count on two hands the amount of companies that actually were able to get approved. It's us, Ford, GM. It's kind of amazing that two guys with zero experience were able to get the approval. We have 14 employees currently in Fort Worth at our factory. We're hiring 10 more in the next 2 weeks, and we're excited for this first opportunity to help out our community by offering our N95 that we manufacture here in Fort Worth. And we're sad to hear that we were disqualified. And I understand if it was a disqualification because of price or, it's not the right type of respirator, but we bid, the way the contract was set up, it disqualified any U.S. manufacturers. They're all specific Chinese models. And even though we have a respirator that's made of the exact same material, it's found about polypropylene, melt-blown fabric, same type of approval, you'll find us listed right next to them on the CDC NIOSH website. We were disqualified. So my point, what I really just wanted to shed light on is, in the future, I'm employing people, I'm trying to make payroll. We're here in Fort Worth. We were founded because we wanted to help our community. We donate to the Tarrant County Food Bank, and we need the support of our communities to buy local, because in the future, if this were to happen again, when it happens again, we will be here for everybody, and instead of being in the same situation where we're relying on China instead of local manufacturers, we won't be here, and so we need some help. And so maybe in the future allow us to bid on the contract.
Thank you, sir. Next is John Bolomanwich. If I got the first one right, I sure didn't get this one.
That's pretty good, Judge. John Bolomanwich, and thank you. David's my business partner, and I appreciate the time to expound kind of on what he's had to say. I'm a North Texas native. I'm a graduate of the University of Texas at Arlington. I started my real estate career primarily doing real estate in Grand Prairie in Arlington. My son was born about 5 years ago. He had a severe birth defect, two surgeries by the time he was 9 days old. And the idea that his doctors and nurses wouldn't have what they needed was just absolutely unacceptable. And like David said, we tried to do something about it. In the midst of the pandemic, it was a mad scramble for PPE, and I understand that there's a lot of shysters that have been in that market. And what David and I decided to do, we were only going to do this if we could make it here in America, because we don't want to be reliant on China in the future. They exported the virus, and then they exported us the PPE. We paid dearly for it, in many cases 5x or more of what it should have cost. Obviously, we're making it here now. We make the Model 1836 respirator, which I'm wearing. We named it the 1836 because it's the year of Texas independence. The typeface on our logo is inspired by the first printed copy of the Declaration of Independence. This company and what we're doing is planting our flag in the ground of that we're not going to rely on China in the future. The biggest problem that I see here that needs addressing, this is not sour grapes, that we don't have a chance, or we're not going to win this bid, obviously. My problem with it is, and I wanted to bring it to y'all's attention, is the fact that the county specifically requested 4 specific models made in Guangzhou, Jingtao, Zhongyi, and Shanghai, and to the exclusion of all others. And I don't think when you have another product that is made in your county that is to the exact same specifications, out of the exact same material, I find it unbelievable, and I don't believe it was on purpose. There's plenty of decisions in government that government can be a blunt force tool, that we don't always get things exactly right, but if we don't bring it to your attention, I know there's no opportunity to ever get it right in the future. There are about 12.5 employees that have woken up every day, been at our factory at 6 a.m. every day since early November, making these N95s by the hundreds of thousands right here. And if we don't have policymakers and the public choosing with our dollars to support companies here in the United States manufacturing this stuff, we're going to be in the exact same position in the future for the next pandemic, when God forbid it's something as transmissible or more and more deadly than what we're dealing with now. We want to make these things in quantity so that it's not just for healthcare workers, so that anybody can have it, whether it's your immunocompromised grandmother or whoever. We want it available for everybody, but it only works if policymakers and the public make good decisions in purchasing and contracting. So I appreciate your time. Thank you for your service to our county.
Okay, and then I've got one call. Mr. Sherrod Perry. I agree.
Hello?
Mr. Perry, we are now to the agenda item regarding contract for more masks, and you had asked to speak. You have 3 minutes.
Yes. Okay. All right. So so we're ordering more masks, which, as you know, where I stand, I think that's completely worthless. But let me talk about this because we're hearing about all the spikes in cases, in Tarrant County, and it almost seems like around the world we're hearing about spikes in cases all at once. But something that's been pointed out and I think needs to be restated is that after months and months and months and months of wearing masks, what's happening? Well, as we know, mask wearers, they're going to breathe in less oxygen. They're rebreathing their own carbon dioxide. They're rebreathing their own bacteria in. I'm hearing about bacterial pneumonia infections happening more and more often. And also I've learned that people are actually rebreathing in pieces of the mask themselves. So you could be breathing in microplastics and cloth fibers. So if after months and months and months of doing this, what could that lead to? It could lead to people with weaker immune systems. So again, what are some realistic reasons for these current spikes in cases? Well, if you're weakening people's immune systems with these policies, there you go. And number two, we are in flu season, all right? So again, normally we would see spike in flu, but as you saw in Vinny's presentation, flu is almost gone. So I don't know, maybe some flus are being classified as COVID. It seems very plausible. And not only that, it's something that I'm learning is that why do colds and flus go up during the winter anyway? They go up because we're outside less because it's colder, and it's less sunny because it's winter. And a very simple correlation is more sun means you're going to have more vitamin D in your system. More vitamin D in your system means you have a stronger immune system. So again, why are people getting sicker, they say? And I will throw in a third cause that's sort of under the radar still, is 5G wireless, which is being deployed. People are buying 5G phones. You see all the advertisements. Hey, you can buy 3 or 4 of these for your whole family. So as 5G gets deployed, it is a fact that some people are sensitive to electromagnetic radiation. This is lots of studies and science behind this. Not everyone is, but people are. So some of these people are going to be affected by this new 5G technology. I don't know what percentage, but okay, but it is a factor. Another factor, I've already mentioned how the PCR test can be adjusted to be made more sensitive. So if you get a negative at 25 cycle threshold, that negative could become a positive once you raise the cycle threshold. So you can literally turn a negative into a positive just by dialing it up and dialing it down. So I don't know if that's been done. There's the information on that is not accessible, so I have no idea. And I'll throw in the last cause, stress. All this stress and fear and confusion also weakens people's immune system to make them sicker. So again, why are there spikes in cases? It's definitely not because people are not wearing masks. Everywhere I go, I see masks. They're in their car with the mask. They're running outside doing exercise with their mask on. They're in the stores. Almost everybody has a mask on. People are wearing the mask. Okay,
Time's
so
up,
that's not
Mr.
too
Perry.
far.
Time's up. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Talk to us about the comments regarding why were they disqualified?
Yes, I received comments from United States Mask last week, and as I explained to him, the bid specified, I'm going to read it exactly. The Public Health Department has performed fit testing for many different models of N95 and KN95 masks during the COVID-19 pandemic. We are accepting bids for only masks listed below, which have been already passed testing and deemed suitable for the Public Health Department. Other models may be pursued at a later time for a different purpose. However, at this time, no other models will be tested or accepted.
So even if they're approved by the CDC, we weren't going to accept them?
No, it needs to be tested by Public Health.
Well, why? So
we had 6 masks in the bid that were already tested by Public Health. And
were they given an opportunity to send it to Public Health to be tested?
No.
Was that in the bid?
No, that was not in the bid.
Well, how would they know that?
No, to send it to Public Health to be tested?
Yeah.
We told them that we would pursue another bid later that we would make available for Public Health to test at a later date. But right now, we need masks. It's urgent that we get masks for Public Health right now. So we had 6 masks that have already been tested by Public Health that were suitable for us to get this first bid out. And the next time we put out a bid, as we stated in the bid, we would test other product.
How many are we buying this time?
We're going to buy around 100,000 of each mask.
So basically we sent out 428 bids knowing that there was only going to be 6 of them that we were going to use.
No, we sent it out to 428 vendors.
Okay.
And we received 59 responses.
Yeah, but you just said there was only 6 that were tested that we could approve.
Right, there were 6 brands that were tested.
So
they were sold by multiple vendors.
Well, Vinny, I guess, got out of here too early today.
Yeah, he did. Is this an urgent item?
It is urgent.
Well, it's urgent only to the extent that we need them quickly. And
I have samples of both of the masks.
well, I guess my question is more not the samples of the mask, but the fact that they're CDC qualified in my mind should have been the stopping point. Number 2, what's the difference in price between what you're asking us to approve today and their masks?
The primary vendor for that particular mask will be $1.60. Secondary's price is $1.79, and the alternate's price is $1.85. The mask that these gentlemen submitted was $2.50.
So they are, at least from a perspective, they're more expensive than what
Yes,
the others were.
yes. And I'm not an expert. This is probably more in public health realm. Looking at the specifications of that particular item and the specifications that were submitted for this particular mask, it doesn't line up. And looking at the mask, this is the mask that was in the bid, and it has additional cover to extend out toward the ears. This is the mask that they submitted that was not approved by Public Health. And I don't know if it's going to get approved in the next bid, but I will send it out over for them to test as soon as they're available to do that.
It's $2.50 versus $1.70?
Yes, this is $1.70. This is the approved mask. This is the $2.50 mask.
That's significant. That's a significant difference.
Yes.
It is a significant difference, but I would like to see local companies get a chance to provide us with stuff that we need. I would like to see you work with these guys and see if we can't get their mask approved, and then we can argue about price.
Okay. All right, and I do want you to know that we did also award to a Dallas company as well. This company is out of Carrollton, and there is West Grove is a Dallas company.
Yeah, but
We
the
awarded
mask
to-
is still made in China, right?
The 3M's made in the United States, though.
3M, okay.
So if I'm understanding, the priority for right now is for us to act on this current bid award so that public health can get the masks that they need for very real things happening today.
Yes.
But then moving forward, that United States masks, that they would have an opportunity to present their product to public health for public health to make their evaluation?
Yes.
Okay. So if that's the plan, then I move for approval.
I'll second, but I'm looking at you, Vinnie. I want you to take a look at their math.
Oh, he snuck back in here.
And see if you can't find some equivalency.
And I guess there's part of me that says, okay, so you want to take on the role of approving where the masks are instead of just saying anything that's CDC qualified.
My apologies, I missed part of the conversation. The way I understood it from my team is that in the beginning, when we were short on PPE, they evaluated all the vendors that had masks available. And we found that because a lot of supply was coming from all over, not a lot were actually providing the good seal that the N95s are supposed to have. So they ended up with 2 or 3 different options that now we're consistently reordering from. And as the work has progressed, the staff who are able to do this fit testing work are now standing up mass vaccination sites. So to find the time to evaluate, find the public health staff who can volunteer to go do this fit testing, because it takes a little bit to go do the work, they're just not there. They're saying we have reorders happening, let's just let that continue. And that's why what you heard, I think, was that currently we're okay. But if we need to evaluate others, we'll try to find the time. It just might take a little bit to get that done.
So you're requiring all your people to wear N95s?
So if you have a direct patient contact, especially in our clinics, or if you come to a vaccination site, you have been given the option to wear a PPE that's appropriate. Some people choose to just wear a regular mask because they're volunteers. But those that are vaccinators or physicians like Dr. Kokut, you saw her at the clinic, she's even wearing a face shield, N95. When I go out to that clinic and I'm going to be there present with the public and, close to the vaccinators and so forth, where there's a lot of people, I wear an N95. So I have the training and I've been fit tested to do that. So those are high-risk scenarios as you put through a lot of people and you have direct patient contact. That's the appropriate PPE to wear.
I do think we should make here's what I would say. If you're not going to go with CDC qualified, then you're going to have to continually reevaluate or evaluate the vendors. And if that's too time consuming, then I would suggest that you go to something that says this is CDC approved.
It's not that. It's you have to make sure that your workforce is fit tested and they're getting a good seal. So just because they're CDC qualified doesn't mean that our workforce is able to use it correctly. So once we are able to fit test them, sometimes they find, well, this mask works better for me because I get a better seal. So we've had 2 or 3 vendors that we found that most of our people were able to get a good seal with it, and we've stuck with the reordering with those. So that's how it's been done. I'm sure they're very qualified masks. I mean, I'm not, saying that this is not a good mask, but all I'm saying is my folks have done the legwork, found 2 or 3 companies that we're getting consistent resupply from, and that's where we are at this point.
When you go out for the next time, I would prefer for you to reevaluate the folks who are willing to put their stuff in.
Yes, thank you.
Any other discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Are there any appointments today, Commissioner Brooks? I think you have one.
Yes, I have one also.
to replace Vicky Mize on the Human Services Advisory Board. I would ask the appointment of David Johnson, who is a relationship manager with United Way of Tarrant County and the Texas Veterans Network. I move approval.
Second.
David Johnson.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Commissioner Fickus?
Yes. I have two, through the City of Northwestern Hills Tax Increment Reinvestment Zone number 1 and Tax Increment Reinvestment Zone number 1A. I'd like to appoint Rebecca Barksdale to a 2-year term.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. You have before you the claims, including the addendum. I think you just gave us some additional.
Yes, we would ask that you also add those two particular items to the addendum that you approve on the claims.
Move approval of the claims, including the addendum and the additional addendum.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Oh, is that in here?
Thank you.
I believe that, Judge Woodley, did you pass those?
Oh, I didn't pass it now. I thought it was just mine, and I apologize. So all y'all's are in here, and you may or may not get them.
Ah, okay. Very good. Okay, thank you.
Did we vote?
Not yet.
No.
Do we even have a motion?
Yes.
Second?
Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. We do have one additional audience participation. Do we have any insurance bonds to pass this time?
Not today.
Okay, then our audience participation is Mindia Whittier. Would like to speak for 3 minutes, so please come forward.
Hello. Unfortunately, I'm here today to say we told you so. What we said about Sheriff Wayborn's 287G agreement being a vehicle for something other than safety was right all along. Wayborn has proved that when he recently wielded his authority as sheriff for a similar purpose, serving as a keynote speaker at a Stop the Steal rally. The promotional materials featured him wearing the Tarrant County Sheriff's uniform. He promoted the event from his official Tarrant County Sheriff Facebook page. He was introduced at the event as Sheriff Bill Wayborn. It has never been more clear that Wayborn uses the office of sheriff to fulfill a personal political agenda. It also has never been more clear that he does not abide by the truth. At the rally, he said, "I know that Donald Trump is the president, and you cannot have peace in your house, you cannot have peace in your neighborhood, your community, your state, or this country until we know the truth." He talks about law and order and assumes the credibility that's imbued on the top law enforcement office in our county. So if he insinuates that the rule of law wasn't followed in the election, it must be true, right? It's no surprise that following his speech, people headed from DFW to DC and attempted a coup. They followed him like sheep, and so did some of you. He told you that immigrants who commit crimes are falling through the judicial cracks and harming our community, and that 287G has improved safety in other places, all without credible evidence about its efficacy or cost. But what he says must be true, right? The seditionists participated in a riot at Wayborn's urging. You handed him the tools to undermine democracy at his urging. You could convince yourself before that Wayborn's motivation with 287G was safety. Now that he has been a ringleader in this baseless movement to undermine a free election, it is reasonable to question what his real motivation was. In Hitler's Germany, not all of his enablers were rabid anti-Semites. Many were men who just went along step by step down the road. 3 of you who voted to approve the 287G agreement are those men. There is a line all the way from the coup at the Capitol to this commissioner's courtroom. So now is the time for accountability. You must undo what you have done. Agendize the 287G agreement and vote for its termination, or your legacy will be stained by complicity in the attempts by an administration to undermine our Constitution. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now recess our open meeting to proceed to close to discuss items exempted under section 551.071, 072, 074, 076, and 087 of the Texas Government Code. May not be back. Yep, she's there. Having returned from our closed session, there being no business to conduct at this time, we stand adjourned. And she blinked at me, so she was on.
I have one other